Okay, I'd like to call a meeting of Tuesday, October 6th, City Council meeting to order. I'd like to ask you to please stand to pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So please stay standing for a moment and quietly contemplate in your own thoughts concerns that you have for your own family, our city, and our country. Okay, thank you. I'd like to announce that we had two closed sessions this evening that started at 5 p.m. The first was conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation and pertaining to Jones versus the City of Angels Camp. There's no action to report on that item. Second item was conference with a labor negotiator. This is our agency designated representative Scott Kenley and Richard Matranga, involving our Police Officers Association. And I'd like to announce that they have met and conferred with a labor negotiator of the Peace Officers Association with no resolution of the matters that they had discussed. Those are the announcements I'd like to make. Next item on our agenda is approval of our agenda, and I'd like to ask council members and staff for any changes. I'd like to announce that item number 6, due to an absence of the person involved with the presentation, is going to be pulled. I'm asking for it to be pulled and moved to our next meeting on October 20th, and that has to do with the kitchen update at Utica Park. If that's all right with the council members, we'll do that. Other than that, the agenda will stand. The next item on our, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I hope you're comfortable here. The last time we had a large turnout, and Mary Kelly went to work trying to find a location that would handle a large crowd, and the high school was not available, and the grammar school was not available, and but she was able to locate this. There's standing room, but there are also more chairs available if anybody needs a chair. I don't know whether we've run out of chairs, but there's a couple of seats down here in the front. Anybody that really needs to sit down, please come up and avail yourself of the few empty seats that are available here. We'll move now to staff updates, and I'm going to start on this side tonight. I caught his eye. And please introduce yourself as you go around the table. These are our various department heads in the city, for those of you that might not know them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Dave Hanover, and I'm the planning director here with the city. I've handed you tonight reports of activities that have happened over the last couple of weeks. A lot of these items are been continuing. I'm going to highlight just a couple of the big items. One is regarding the housing element. We met with the state, the consultant. We met with the state, and we are, as part of those changes and recommendations from the state, we were meeting with the Housing Policy Committee on Friday to go over those, and then once the committee has recommended changes and we get those back to the consultant for changes, we will be bringing that back to the City Council for approval. So hopefully we're looking to put that on the agenda for the November 6th meeting right now, and that's what we're heading for. The other big item, the Angels Creek Master Plan Trail. I'm working on the RFP right now, and hopefully we'll be having that sent out to consultants by the end of this month to get that project started, so that we can use the COG funding as part of the #1 priority that the city had as part of their OWP project.
David, just before you go off,
Sure.
how long is that process going to take?
That's going to take, well, it'll be a 30-day, the consultants will have 30 days to put a proposal together, at which point it would probably take, once we get the proposals, it'll probably take me about 2 to 3 weeks to review them to make sure that they've met all of what we need, and then they will come to the council for an approval, and then we'll start work. So probably about 60 days.
So I can report to the COG that probably at least by the first of the year we'll have some momentum on that?
Yeah, oh yeah. The other big items, the access management plan, the Caltrans completed a charter agreement that's putting together for the city. I reviewed it, and those comments will be going back to the state. Other than that, I have a lot of items on the agenda tonight, so I'll be talking on those. And if you have any questions on any of the items, I'll be happy to. I'll have one, the large format retail. I know that's a hot topic. I have a notice of intention going to the Planning Commission to open up that portion of the zoning ordinance, and then at which point the subcommittee and myself have been working on it already, but now once we get a notice of intent to open up the zoning ordinance, then we can move in getting that ordinance amended. So we're moving forward with that. So I'll still be meeting with the committee to get all those changes ready to go for the Planning Commission.
David,
Yes, sir.
I see on here that you have the consultation with the county set up. Is that really set up? You're going to meet with?
Well, I'm waiting for the COG meeting on the 19th to see what the COG, because you guys received the draft at the last meeting. I wasn't sure what the review period. I'll be talking with John Benoit to make sure of what's going to happen at this month's meeting, and if this month's meeting is just more review, then I'm going to probably start looking at setting up those consultation meetings probably for the month of November. So.
Okay, any further questions? Move on to our chief.
Thank you. During the period of from September 9th.
Introduce yourself, Dale, because there's a lot of people here that might not have ever met you.
Sure.
And they're
Dale
probably
Mendenhall.
happy they haven't.
Yeah, they don't want to meet me. Dale Mendenhall, I'm the Chief of Police. And since the last council meeting from 9/9 to 9/30, the Angels Camp Police Department handled 154 calls for service. During that time, there was 6 felony arrests, 2 of which were for a narcotics violation, 2 were for domestic violence, and 1 was for assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 for burglary. There were 7 misdemeanor arrests, 2 for driving under the influence, 1 for public intoxication, 2 for being under the influence of drugs, and 2 for outstanding arrest warrants. Now, on the 28th, we had a male victim, about 81 years old, that reported that he had been stabbed with an ice pick several times during a domestic dispute. The victim received minor puncture wounds to his arms and hand. The suspect, which was a 67-year-old woman, was taken into custody the following day and was charged with assault with a deadly weapon and crimes against an elderly person and domestic violence. On the 10th, a male juvenile was arrested and charged with burglary after he'd stolen alcohol from Safe Mart. Approximately $70-some worth of alcohol was stolen. And then on the 10th, also in the evening, we had a deer run in front of one of my patrol cars and did about $800 worth of damage to the car in front of the high school of all places. So and that's all we've had during that time.
Any questions? Go ahead, Melissa.
Melissa Ralston, Finance Director. I have one thing to bring up, and that's regarding the Greenhorn Creek and the Title 22 water that we've been having an ongoing issue for the past few years. Mike Kristoff from Greenhorn Creek delivered 2 checks to me the other day and has brought himself up current on the agreement with Greenhorn Creek. So that's been a long...
So we're all on the same page?
Yes.
I think I see Mike Kristoff in the audience here tonight, in fact. Thank you, Mike. And for those of you people that might not be aware of it, we have in our reports, Greenhorn Creek through the month of September has taken, listen to this, 22 million gallons of water, of recycled water that's gone through the recycling process. and the city is reusing that water, which previously would just be sprayed on the fields south of the city. And they supplement that with water from the creek, but that's 22 million gallons of water that's being used a second time, and that's a terrific accomplishment for everyone involved. Yeah. And it's not only benefiting the city and Greenhorn Creek, but it's also benefiting people downstream from our city. Thanks for that news, Melissa. Move over to Gary Gio. Please introduce yourself, Gary.
I'm Gary Gio. I'm the city engineer. I don't have a whole lot to report tonight. We're still working on the Safe Route to School project. I don't know if any of you have been out on Garner Lane. They've got most of the curb and gutter done, and they are starting the sidewalk. Once they get that done, they'll be jumping on the Murphy's Grade Road. On the stimulus money, we have executed all the documents with the state now. And a bit of news, I don't know if the council's aware, but they gave us a 1% interest rate in addition to the $3.1 million grant, which is the lowest rate we could have gotten. So it's another benefit. It'll cost the city about a little over $15,000 a year to pay for this entire project, which is kind of like once-in-a-lifetime financing. And it's all still contingent on the Prop 218 process, so we need to get the word out to the citizens about what this is really about and the impacts of this vote.
Because of the importance, I'm going to ask you to please repeat what you said in terms of the grant so that everybody gets it.
Yeah. We've been allocated a $3.1 million grant and I believe it's $286,000 loan at 1% for 20 years to cover the cost of the wastewater treatment project that we have now started construction on.
Now, the alternative which we were working on up until this time has been what?
Was USDA financing, which was $1 million grant and a $3 million loan, which would have resulted in, I believe, payments around $180,000 a year compared to the $15,000. So it's a huge difference.
Okay, that's a good job.
And that's about it.
Gary, just real quick, sidewalk, TE project?
We're still working on the design. We're getting there.
That sidewalk is where?
On this highway.
Yeah, it's on the
I know
highway.
where it is, but so the public knows about it.
Well, I just want to be able to report to COG what kind of progress we're making, so how far in the
I've
design-
received all the survey work. We're probably about maybe 20% into the design. I've been slammed lately with a lot of these other things, so to be honest with you.
Do we anticipate?
In the next week or two, we should have the preliminary design all done.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's for sidewalks on Main Street along Highway 49. Any other questions? Okay, we'll now move to Mary Kelly.
Hi, I'm Mary Kelly. I'm the city clerk, and I have nothing to report.
Richard?
Nothing right now, Mayor.
That's the first time I've heard a lawyer not have much to say.
Okay, let's come up here then. We'll talk about council updates. I'd like to start with the person on my left tonight, Jack Bodie.
Since the last meeting, I've attended the LLD meeting out at Greenhorn. It was pretty uneventful. There wasn't much went on. Also, since the last meeting, we've been to LAFCO. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that was also very uneventful. Other than that, I don't really have anything to report.
Okay. Craig?
At the Personnel and Finance Committee meeting on Monday, we continue to explore cost-cutting stuff, and the staff was able to come up with some cost-cutting measures in terms of teleconferencing. It's not a huge expense in terms of the big scheme of things, but with Mary and Melissa, they were able to reduce significantly the cost of that. We also took a look at some departments and some of the costs involved in some of the departments and where we could possibly save some money. So we continue to work in that vein in those Personnel Finance Committee meetings. We also talked about the U-Haul trucks parked in town. I've got a lot of calls about the U-Haul trucks in town, so there was a lot of conversation with David and his group with the planning department as to how we're going to proceed with that. So I don't have an answer for everybody right now about the U-Haul trucks, but David is coming forth with some plans and working through the ordinances so we can make sure that they are doing the right thing in terms of a business in the downtown, because I've gotten a lot of calls regarding the unsightliness of those trucks parked kind of helter-skelter around the highway. So that's it. And I'll be attending COG with Elaine tomorrow.
Elaine?
I'll be attending COG with Craig and the Traffic Circulation Committee, Safety Services Committee. I'll be attending the Calaveras Economic Development Summit, and I will attend the Infrastructure Facilities meeting with the mayor. That's it.
Can you all hear everything so far okay? A large crowd. Hope you all can hear it all right. At UPA, that's Utica Power Authority, where we're joint owners of the water conveyance system that comes to our city. There's a joint powers association with Utica Power, UPUD, up in Union Public Utility District up in Murphy's, that supplies their water, and we're co-owners of that. As you may have read or noticed, there's ongoing litigation between Utica Power Authority and CCWD. Lots of meetings being held, primarily to be looking at our water rights, and we don't have a final resolution of some of those issues, but both parties are conscientiously going through negotiations on them, and that's a plus. And hopefully further litigation can be avoided as a result of those negotiations. Reference was made to the $3.1 million grant that the city received on stimulus money. One of the requirements of the state is when you receive that kind of a grant, it's necessary to have a Prop 218 notification, and hopefully many of you or all of you have received that letter addressed to your home talking about a public hearing which will come up on November 17th. We haven't made a final determination, but there's a pretty good chance that we'll probably have a workshop before that meeting. We haven't made a final choice decision on that, to educate the public. It's kind of hard to understand. Here we're calling for a public hearing on a rate increase schedule that was put in place in 2006. But believe it or not, that's one of the intricacies and requirements of receiving the $3.1 million grant. Now, in the event that a majority of the homeowners and the ratepayers object to that rate schedule of 2006, we would then lose our $3.1 million grant, because we would not have complied with that requirement. So it's kind of hard to understand that, but that is the case. And I think even us as council members can't completely understand it. We still have some questions in our mind, but we'll have further notices about that in the ensuing weeks. But I hope you've all received that. And Mary Kelly's name is down there. If you have questions, please let Mary know. That's all I have on council updates. We'll now move to the next item on our agenda, and that's a public comment. This would be on any items that are not on our agenda, and would like to ask, please identify yourself and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We don't hold you tight to that, but we want to make sure that all public people, public members, have a chance to comment.
Mr. Mayor, Bob Maneri, President of Angels Camp Business Association. Just want to bring you up to date on what's going on in the month of October. October 1st, St. Joseph's Mark Twain Hospital and the merchants in downtown Angels Camp turned on the pink lights for Cancer Breast Awareness Month. And we'll also be putting the lights up in the other part of town where Middleton Shopping Center is. That'll be happening soon. October 11th, this coming Sunday, will be the Taste of Calaveras. We have 40 wineries and restaurants coming out there to show what is going on in Calaveras County and Angels Camp. That'll be held at Dovetail Ranch from 1 to 5. October 17th is our annual sidewalk sale downtown. The merchants will roll out the sidewalks, have all the visiting people come in and see what Angels Camp is about. And I hope the City Council will attend the other two events, the one coming up on Sunday and on the 17th, the sidewalk sale. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm George Fry, 1304 Oak Place, right off of Mark Twain Road. I'll try to keep each one of these items to 3 minutes. I just wanted to share once again with the council an update on the Alternatives Conference that I've been working on for the last 30 days. All of you folks in the audience, I'm working on a conference to bring between 700 and 1,000 participants. It's a national conference. Last year it was in Syracuse, New York. This year it's going to be in Omaha, Nebraska. I will be there for that 4-day conference. It's the first time in 12 years it's coming back to California, and we're one of the 5 finalists. We're looking at least $300,000 to $400,000 shot in the arm for Angels Camp, and if you take that times what they say about the money that you spend, for every dollar that's spent on something like this, there's 2.5 more dollars being spent. So I want you all to be aware of that, and I'll keep you posted after I come back from the conference November 1st. Thank you. The next item I wanted to talk to you about this evening is that people know me in this county for the last 32 years. I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. I always have been, and I always will be. People have been complaining about what's been going on in terms of the unsightliness of the Angels Camp Mobile Home Park, with the beautiful lawn there.
Would you address us?
Certainly.
Yeah.
I just want to be
okay.
fair to everybody.
Yeah.
We can hear you. Okay, good. Thank you, Steve. So anyway, people have been complaining about that, so I took it upon myself to call the owner of the mobile home park, because it is unsightly from the road, and we have that beautiful sign that's the entrance from Altaville to the rest of Angels Camp. So I called the owner, told them, I said, you know, I'm really concerned about the children there running out in the streets, because I've seen it for many years now. The fact that there's a lot of noise from the traffic, and there's a lot of there's not enough privacy, and it would give a better appearance if we put up a wood fence. I checked with the City of Angels, with Dave, and I don't need any, the owner doesn't need any permits, so I told him what I was proposing. I went out this morning at 7:15 and measured the 200-foot length for the fence that needs to go up. I went to Calaveras Lumber. I talked with my friend Mike Fullaway, I've known over 30 years, and I said, sharpen your pencil, we want to put this fence up, we want to work with the owner, and we want to get rid of the unsightliness. Mike said, I'll get back to you in 2 hours, and I'll give you a materials list and how much it's going to cost. With the labor and the auger rental of $55 for 1 day, we can put this fence up in 3 days. Hopefully it'll be up by the end of the weekend, and the total cost is less than $2,000. I have for you pictures, the before pictures, that I would like for all of you to have. You're welcome. And then when the fence is done, I'll do the post pictures, and you'll all be able to see the beautiful fence. The third item, I was at the personnel meeting yesterday with a discussion about the U-Haul trucks. Everybody's absolutely right. They're totally unsightly. The That's not an appropriate place to be, close to the historic portion of the downtown area. So I made the suggestion. I also have talked with people, and one person said, well, maybe we should move it up by the old Perco's place. And I said to that person, I said, I'm sure that the Lees would be thrilled if you put all of those trailers, U-Haul trailers up there next to their Angels Inn. So what we need to do is the same thing that I just did with the fence with the mobile home park. And that is, we need to approach the person, ask them how we could help him, how we could move those to a more appropriate area, in a light industrial area, but not off the beaten track, and work with that person, just like I've done with the mobile home owner who lives in Oakdale, California. So that's my suggestions. I thank you for your time, Mayor and the council.
Any other public comment?
Hi, Mayor. Bob Middleton, 557 Live Oak, owner of Middleton's. I noticed the historical shopping signs that were put up on the entrances coming into town on the Angel City limit sign. I'm assuming those were put up by the city because I know they weren't put up by ACPA. Do you know who put those up?
Dave?
Yeah, it's part of the BLT program in terms of getting businesses to the historical commercial. They're also working on signs, some temporary signs. They have been working with off-site property owners to create places for signage for businesses in all of Angels Camp, and so that's where those signs came from.
Well, they're beautiful signs. My concern is there's still nothing that points north. Everything points south.
Right. When you see the temporary signs, they're more generic in terms of actual Angels Camp shopping and some of the artwork. We're processing a temporary sign permit for the BLT to put those up, and if you want to come down and see them, Bob, you can. So.
Okay. Well, I always want to know if I get signs painted, can we put them on the city entrance sign to say that you can turn left or commercial district to the left?
Well, I mean,
I have no problem paying for them. I just want to see if I can get it done.
Well, that's something that there are property owners. If you want to do off-site parking, if you off-site signage, then you would need to go through the proper steps and whether they're off-site in terms of on a private property, whether it's in the city or the county, or if it's on the city sign, then we can take a look at it and see what's appropriate for that sign.
These are on the city signs.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm questioning about.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, we reviewed it. The planning department reviewed it, and we can take a look at it.
Okay. Thanks.
Bob, what you're looking for is basically to be advertising the shopping both sides. It's coming up on the 4, right and left.
It would be a more generic. That's a pretty generic sign that's up there right now. There would be no typical. There wouldn't be. It wouldn't say Middleton's to the right, but I mean, there's something that we can look at. No. Good.
Well, anyway,
so but we'd be willing to work with them on that, and if there's something, because the sign that's up there right now, it's just it's a 1x8, and it.
That's a temporary sign, correct?
That's also a temporary sign as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
The big issue with the signage and
Caltrans is a huge issue.
We're working diligently on it. Any other public comment? If not, we'll close public comments. We'll move to next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. These are items which are considered to be routine, acted upon by the council one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or public member can request any of the items to be removed and discussed separately as part of the regular agenda. So we have 2 items tonight. One is the minutes of the regular meeting of September 15th, 2009. The other item is a motion to pay the bills. Entertain a motion that we...
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Craig Turco and seconded by Jack Boating to move forward on the consent agenda. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, carries 4-0. We'll move now to our regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is consideration of assuming financial responsibility and/or contribution to the cost of maintenance of the roadways in the Greenhorn Creek development. And this is continued from our September 15th council meeting, and Richard Matranga will address us. We'll have discussion and possible action.
Thank you, Mayor. You received an opinion from me about a week ago. I want to drop back a step here and revisit the earlier opinion that I gave you several months ago. It pops up in this opinion, really, because one of the most important points in that opinion was that it's legally clear. In a world where there aren't a lot of legally clear things, it's legally clear that the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District is not a separate legal entity. It's all in the family here. The City Council ultimately controls the purse strings and has the authority to create, operate, and terminate. The improvements in this district are really public in nature. And in my research, I determined that the law provides that to the extent the property located in the district gets some special benefit from any particular improvement, including the streets, above and beyond the benefit to the general public, the parcels should be assessed on a proportionate basis. So the task really is to determine and quantify the special benefits and the general benefits of the streets that were included by the city back in 1994 as improvements in this district, which again is part of the city, not a separate legal entity. The opinion that I just gave you hopefully points the way. And essentially, the question of whether the city can assume financial responsibility, the answer is yes, at least in proportion to the general benefits that the streets in that entity receive. I have a short report that I've prepared for you, Mayor, and I'm going to recommend that the council follow the recommendations set forth in that report.
Richard, before you go further, you want it, because it is included in this, in the agenda item, the conflict of interest issue?
Sure. I'd be happy to address that. There was a question because two of the council members live in the area that's defined as the district, whether it would be a conflict of interest for them to participate in the discussion and the decision. And essentially that was what we would call a no-brainer, because the 1974 Political Reform Act makes it clear that there is a specific exception when the council is dealing with increasing assessments like this. The answer is there is no conflict of interest.
Okay.
Thank you.
You convey, how about any questions for Richard at this point?
One thing I'd like to add there, just to clarify a bit, the exercise of determining the special and general benefits is complex, and it's not for a lawyer, it's for an engineer. Yeah. And that's part of the recommendation I just mentioned to you. But I do recommend that you have the district engineer make that determination. I've discussed it briefly with the city engineer, and I'll be honest, I don't know how or why the streets were included as improvements in this district back in 1994, but they are. So the issue really has to do with either sharing or taking a portion, which could be up to the entire amount of the burden that the folks, and I should say parcels in this district, have shouldered since 1994 for maintenance of those streets.
But the initial agenda item had to do with the city accepting those streets. What you're referring to is more of an apportionment of the assessment in terms of if there is a special benefit
Correct.
Found or determined, which I'm having a hard time imagining what that would be. But that would be actually a kind of a separate tag along to the city or this council accepting those streets. I just want to make sure that that's clear, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions, comments further?
I'll save my comments for after public comment.
Not yet.
Okay. Public comments, please.
Steve DeFew, 576 Salsa Place, Angels Camp. Mayor, fellow council people. First of all, I want to thank Richard for complying with the time restraints of getting it back to us after the 15th
he was pretty busy too, and to say that we're happy about his findings would be an understatement. I want to ask two things. I don't think it's necessary, but if the council needs any more facts or figures that or have to be refreshed in their memory about what I supplied them on the 15th, I'd be happy to do that. And I also would like to clarify the fact that our intent was never to get relief from the current assessment, although it looks like somewhere down the line that may be a possibility. There was two intents here: naturally to have the city recognize the contributions that the district was now providing, and secondly, not to look at being reassessed again up to $600 a year. So I would politely ask you folks to not to take too much time, because I've aged a little bit in getting a decision here. But as far as the assessment and the evaluation of that, Rich and fellow council people, the chairman of the LLD is having a meeting with the LLD engineer on the 13th of October. After 11 years, nobody can figure out anything other than maybe the ore cart that would be a special benefit. But we're happy to go through that exercise. And we would like the council to know that I don't think we're going to rush to ask for relief on the assessment until the city is in uniform with the LLD, because there is quite a bit of infrastructure that has to be redone, and we don't want to deplete our funds to complement the light and landscaping part of our responsibility. But if and when we can achieve that, and we can assess whether we need the amount that we're now paying to continue, I think there'll be a lot of fairness in that decision. I also would like the council to be very comfortable in the fact that we are not going to ask for a refund for the last 11 years. We like to start new and go from there. So if there's anything you need from me, I'll be happy to answer it. Or not, so I'll let the other folks get up here if they need to.
Okay. Any further comments?
Okay, thanks.
Any other public comments?
Yeah, Mayor Bob Middleton, 557 Live Oak Drive. I just have a couple of questions. I have no problem with assuming the streets for the City of Angels, but when they were built in 1994, and I don't know if Gary can answer that because Rourke was here then, were those roads built to city specs in 1994? Do they need to be brought up to city specs before you assume them? That's a question for all of this public.
The Greenhorn Creek development and the roads in Greenhorn Creek, where it was a planned development, the zoning was PD. So as part of the process with the Planning Commission and the City Council back then, the streets were allowed to be built to something less than the city standard. So that was already approved by the city back then. So.
Okay. I was just wondering, they're not city spec, they're built to city specs, even in today's specs. I understand today's specs, but 1994 specs are different. What was the other question I had? What about Country Lane Estates? That's a planned community also. And they have a homeowners association where those roads going to want to come back into the city also?
I can't answer that.
That's not an LLD district.
It's a homeowners district, but they pay for their maintenance on the road.
Completely different.
Okay.
It's a separate entity.
I'm just worried about if we do setting precedents for something to come down the road again.
This has only to do with assessment districts of the LLD or LLD district, which is an assessment district. So completely different from an HOA.
Okay. All right.
The LLD, the body for the LLD is the council. We, as a council, have nothing to do with another entity such as Country Lane Estates.
Okay. It was just, I know they're both were planned development, so that was my concern on that. That's all I have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Gladys Dillashaw, 714 Purdy Road, Angels Camp. My concern also is if you accept maintenance on a certain area, you are opening up a box of worms, because As he said, the Angels, or the estate that you were talking about, they had been asked to be accepted by the city many years ago, and the city refused to accept them as the city street. But I think as you look upon this, there will be developments, and they will be asked to the same thing. Will you accept us, and will you accept our maintenance? I know that many people here, you come out and you are here for one development, but the city has been here for 97 years, and it's been handled very successfully, and suddenly there are many questions that are coming up that I question myself as a city resident. And I just hope, as you four councilmen look at this, that you look at the fact that there are other areas in the city that need maintenance, and perhaps you might be opening a can of worms by accepting one maintenance city road against other areas. So thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work that the four of you do, and I wish there were 5. Because I think it says in the attorney's thing that it has to be approved by 4/5 of the council. So right now, there are only 4 council members. Where are we going to get the 5th? Thank you.
Any more comments? Any further comments from anyone?
Good evening, Mayor Lynch. My name is Wes Cullum, reside at 592 Springhouse Road in Angels Camp. You know, I take exception to the previous comment about opening up a can of worms. You know, this is not an argument of or a debate over, you know, trying to resolve problems that Angels Camp may have in some of its history. This is an argument over equity, and what's equitable is equitable. It has nothing to do with opening up a can of worms. Your city engineer told you that those streets were not built to city standards. If I may ask him to clarify, I don't think those streets are of any less strength than than the city standard street. The reason they're not city standards is because of the unique sidewalk design and the parking arrangements. That doesn't make them vulnerable to more maintenance. Those streets, in fact, over the life of the subdivision have been overlaid and repaired on a more frequent basis than any other street in the city. So I would suggest to the council those streets are probably in better shape than most other streets in the city. The final comment I would make is that as part of this ongoing debate was the issue of accepting dedication and ownership of those streets. And I would ask the council, what if your direction tonight is to have staff, have the district engineer determine the level of general benefit, then I would also remind you that you should also direct him to pursue what action needs to take place under the Subdivision Map Act to dedicate those streets and have the city accept the dedication of those streets. Thank you.
I concur wholeheartedly with the last gentleman who spoke that equity is very important here in the city. There's been a long-standing frustration amongst all the residents in the city about the lack of equity. And what I'm speaking of is I'm speaking of the equity that has to do with water and sewer rate-paying customers. If you hook up to the water and you live in the city and not in Angels Oaks and not in Greenhorn Creek, you pay $9,200 to hook up to the sewer if you own a parcel outside there. If you live in Angels Oaks, you pay $660. If you live in Greenhorn Creek, you pay $4,400. Now let's talk about the water. If you live in the city, you pay $8,300 to hook up to the water system. If you live in Angels Oaks, you pay $670. If you live in Greenhorn Creek, you pay $4,000. My campaign has been all about water and sewer rates and what I believe has happened, not with this council, but previous councils, some previous councils, that the ratepayers have been gouged, and they have been gouged for many years. And we have over a $6 million water reserve surplus that all of us have been paying into. And this gentleman speaks of equity, and my hat is off to him, because what I would like to see is that you take the total amount for sewer for Greenhorn Creek and Angels Oaks, total that up, and that's the charge for anybody else in the city. And you do the same thing with the water.
Okay, George, we're talking about roads right now.
That's fine.
We
The gentleman
appreciate
brought
your
up
comment.
equity.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Steve DePew, 576 Sasa. I just want to address my friend Gladys Dillashaw's remarks. I'm sorry that Gladys wasn't here for my presentation and was able to absorb the complete basis for this request. But in respect to the people that clap for her, which I thoroughly respect, I would be happy to bring her up to date in a lot of facts that I don't think she's aware of. And also, with this large agenda, how long are we going to let Mr. Fry campaign tonight?
Okay, any other public comments? If not, we'll close public comments and bring it back up here. We still have further work up here to do on this agenda item. It has to do with possible action. We have a staff report from Richard Matranger in terms of what he's recommending to us, and I'd like to ask for council comments on that.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
My comments are that the changes to Proposition 218 speak for themselves in requiring the separation of general benefits from special benefits as they relate to the LLB streets. The city attorney has provided recommendations and procedures allowing the city staff and the district engineer to analyze the general benefits separately from the special benefits regarding the streets and adjust the assessment accordingly. I believe this can be done without taking the streets in Greenhorn into the city system at this time, because funds can be donated from whatever accounts may have unappropriated funds, and that's my comment.
Okay. Craig?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. If you take a look at the Lighting and Landscaping Act of 1972, there is no reference to roads. There's no reference to streets. It talks about special benefit that alludes to statues, fountains, general lighting, landscaping, recreation, recreational and park playground courts and the like. And I think that there's a compelling argument in terms of whether or not there's any special benefit, and an LLD is a special benefit district. And I think the question is, and I think Richard spelled it out quite clearly, there is no special benefit to the roads. Everybody has a road going up to their home. So there is no special benefit associated with the road. And I think therein lies the rub. I mean, if you take a look at some of the articles, it's pretty clear. A special benefit is particular and a distinct benefit over the above general benefit. Now that's a language that the LLD was founded on. And Richard found in several different of the statutes that city funds can be used to pay for the maintenance of the roads. I believe it's a no-brainer. I think it's the right thing to do. There's been some question as to whether or not this LLD was set up. Let me be careful about this. Whether or not the roads should have been a consideration at all. I think Mr. DeFew made it pretty clear. They're not looking for any kind of retribution. The attorney has asked for maybe a consideration for a reapportionment of the assessment. That was not part of the original agenda item, but I understand where the attorney is going with that. So, in my opinion, there is no special benefit to the road. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the city taking over the maintenance of the roads. I think the financial aspect of what comes out of that district in terms of the benefit to the entire city, which is not recognized by the LLD, is an important factor to consider. So, in my opinion, I'm ready to move forward and after council's opinion to make a motion.
Yeah. Jack.
Yeah, I have been doing a lot of studying on this week, or this last couple of weeks, for several months since Steve made the presentation. The city attorney's recommendations, I think, are very valid. I think we should do that. I'm not disagreeing with Craig that there are no special benefits, but I'm not agreeing with him either. I think we need to do what the city attorney recommends that we do, and I think we need to also get a report from Melissa, from the Director of Finance, on which city funds can be utilized for this amount. And I still think it's negotiable, or I don't know if that's the right word, whether we should actually try to accept the streets as city streets, or do, as Elaine said, get into the donation bracket, so to speak, where we pay the LLD for the maintenance of the streets. And as far as what Mrs. Dillashaw said, I don't think can of worms is maybe not the right word, but there are quite a few streets in Angels that are still privately owned. Where she lives is one. Dad's Road is one, as an example. That was brought up tonight. That's a private road. And we are setting a precedent. There's no other way you can word it. We are setting a precedent for that. Whether it's right or wrong, that's a fact. Anyway, that's the way I feel about it, Mr. Mayor.
For the benefit of the audience, two of the council members sit on the LLD meeting. That's Jack Boating and Elaine Morris. So they're very close to and have good knowledge of roads and the budget that is prepared on an annual basis, just as homeowners are. A while ago, I think one of the things that precipitated this is that looking forward, this was a study done by Gary Gio 2 years ago. Looking forward into the future, he projected that we needed to have an increase in contributions. If you look back in time in 1994, when these various decisions were made by the City Council, for example, to include the maintenance of the roads in the LLD, that was at a time when there were no residents there, was no property tax revenues other than whatever was being paid on the land. And it was also, very importantly, before a very important vote that happened in the year 2002, and that was to increase transient occupancy tax in the city from 6% to 10%. And 1/3 of that increase amount was specifically assigned for road improvements. And that, ladies and gentlemen, the transient occupancy tax comes to the city in total. It's over $800,000 a year that comes to the city. It exceeds our property tax that we receive. It exceeds our sales tax that we receive. So when people talk about leakage on the sales tax, you got to get more sales tax. Ladies and gentlemen, the transient occupancy tax exceeds the sales tax revenue that we have in our city. And further than that, this is repetitious of the presentation made by Mr. DeFew. 80% of the transient occupancy tax is an amount in excess of $600,000 comes from the timeshares at Worldmark. And yet Worldmark is not able to receive any recognition of that in terms of street maintenance. And as you know, there's a lot of cars that go back and forth on those streets, and nothing is. Many of you already know all of this, but I did want to repeat that for those people that may not understand the exact revenues of our city. And we now have the opinion of the attorney relative to it's okay to use city funds to maintain those streets. And this is a renegotiation of something that was done in 1994 because the city was not in a position to take on that burden. And at this point in time, I believe we should be looking at it and proceeding the way Mr. Matranga has indicated. So those are my comments. I think we should move along on the roadmap that Richard has put in front of us.
I just want to make sure that there's two different issues here. One is a reapportionment for the assessment fund, and then that is separate from the fact that we need to determine whether or not it's the pleasure of this council to approve, to move forward with having the Greenhorn Creek streets be accepted by the City of Angels. And then furthermore from that, if there's no special benefit found, then there could be cause for reapportionment based on the legal opinion of the attorney. If you go through the opinion, again, it's pretty clear that the streets probably should not be in the LOD at all. So I'm a little confused as to why we're even talking about, whether or not we talk about, well, how much of the streets. That's an after fact. That talks about the assessment. I think it was the opinion of Mr. DeFew that there wasn't to be any assessment change in his initial discussion. So we can have the LOD engineer go in and look for special benefits. And again, and I'm just reading the statutes, I don't know where you're going to find a special benefit in a road, but I guess if it's a particularly attractive looking piece of road, I guess you could do that. So I think before us, we need to, and if you want me to put in a form of a motion, I think we have two separate issues. One is that we vote to either accept or not accept, have the city accept the streets in Greenhorn Creek. And the second one is then to move forward and direct the LOD engineer to assess any special benefits and apportion it accordingly. Am I saying that correctly, Richard?
Actually, the language of Prop 218 is all assessments shall be supported by a detailed engineer's report prepared by a registered professional engineer.
For special benefit.
Correct.
And then that's the key. This is a special benefit because in order to have an LOD, there has to be something special, unique about that district that allows you to
assess the parcels.
You could say the lamps, you could say the signage, you could say, well, the ore card, I guess. But that is unique and special. Other than that, I think we have two separate issues here. That's my opinion.
How about a motion?
Want me to go? I move that the City of Angels accept the streets in Greenhorn Creek the maintenance and financial responsibility of the streets. Yes, well, it was a motion.
I know. I just wanted to give you a little information. You need to make your motion a little more specific, as specific as the streets that are contained in the LLD, because there are a lot of streets out there that, to be honest with you, are not contained in the LLD. All the streets in Worldmark are not contained in LLD. Streets in Unit 2C, there are portions of those streets that are not included in the LLD. So I'm just, you need to be
Good
careful
point.
with what you
Mr.
say.
Mayor, I'd like to amend my motion. My motion is that the City of Angels accept the roads and streets, roads and/or streets in the LLD district. Did I say something wrong there?
No. Well, Craig, in order to accept the streets, you have to do it for the Subdivision Map Act. You have to adopt a resolution specifically naming the streets tied to recorded maps. You can't just. So what if the council decides to do that, and you need to direct me to prepare a resolution to bring back to you at a future council meeting, which will accomplish what you're trying to do. Richard, correct me if I'm wrong.
So then can I then I make the motion to accept the responsibility, the financial, then I'll amend that, and we'll have a further motion later. How's that?
Let's go. I'm just trying to.
Thank you very much. That's what the amended motion will be. So my amended motion, or my new motion, will be that the City of Angels accept the financial responsibility of maintaining the roads and streets in the LLD district.
Based upon the engineer's analysis.
That's for the assessment.
All right.
I want to keep that separate. Let's let the motion go. That's the motion. That the City of Angels accept the financial responsibility for the maintenance of the streets or roads in the LLD district.
Is there a second? I'd say that it dies for lack of second. Any other motions?
Can we direct the LLD engineer to do what the city attorney has recommended? And can we direct the director of finance to do what the city engineer has directed and bring this back to the council at a later council?
You make that motion? You got to make a motion.
I will make that motion.
And we just state it as a motion then?
I move that we direct the LLD engineer to complete an analysis and report the appropriations of the general benefits and special benefits of the streets in question. Is that correct? Streets in question? And determine with input from the director of finance which city funds can be utilized to pay for the amount which is determined to be of general benefit, whether it be 80% or 100% or whatever.
I'll second that.
Question on the motion?
Okay. Yes. Been moved and second is a question.
Before I vote on it, I just want to question on it. And if it comes back that the apportionment is that there should be a reduction in the assessment?
That won't come back with that. That won't come back with that.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
The assessment, the reduction in assessments is different. It's completely different.
That's exactly what he's going to do. The assessment has to be based on the engineer's findings.
Right.
So if he determines that more of the use of the roads is for the general benefit of the public, he's obviously going to come back and say you need to reduce the assessments in this district.
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with that. They're not going to need, with the money that the LLD takes in, being on that committee, I don't believe they're going to need their $300 a year or whatever they got in the bank now to pay for their posies and whatever else they got planted out there. I just don't think they're going to need it. Do you?
I just want to make sure that this council is aware that it could come back and it could reduce, and then the city would have to absorb for a significant amount of the assessment that's currently being paid by the LLD district.
Correct.
And if that's what you're willing to do, then I understand it. I just want to make sure it's clear, because the initial agenda item did not ask for any kind of reduction in the assessment to burden the city at all, other than the financial responsibility of the roads. Now, what Richard is saying is that if the engineer comes back and says, there ain't nothing special here, folks, then the responsibility could be brought back to the city as a burden of financial responsibility to us. So that's why I'm suggesting to separate them.
But the key word there, Craig, is roads, not posies and plants. The key word is roads. The special apportionment or the general benefits are to the roads, not to.
But
They can't wipe out that whole
Jack,
district.
the majority of the cost associated with the
with
LOD
that.
maintenance is the roads.
I agree with that.
And so if you were to take the big piece of pie and say, okay, there's nothing special here, folks, then if 75% of that cost is not special anymore, then they're going to say they don't have to pay that. Is that the burden that you're willing to accept?
I'm willing to accept what the attorney has recommended.
Okay, it's been moved.
Mr. Mayor, you have redefined the agenda item, so the public comment should be opened up again. You have redefined the agenda item. My presentation to the City Council had nothing to do with the assessment part of the LOD. And for you, Jack, to make a presumption that we don't need that much money is not an educated opinion.
Okay.
You just said we don't think we need that much money. That isn't the question. And this is something about politics that should not be this complicated. Mr. Gio had the chance on the 15th of August, Councilperson Elaine Morris brought up two legitimate points that the city attorney had to address. And we've gone through this exercise, and if Mr. Gio's heart was in his responsibility to the city, he should expose us to what he just did. But the kicker is, we're not talking about the assessment right now. We're talking about taking over the ownership and maintenance of the roads, which the city attorney has already told you that it's a general benefit. Stop complicating this thing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Repeat the motion, please.
Yeah. Mary, was it?
The motion was to direct the LLD engineer to complete an analysis and report that apportions the general benefits and special benefits of the streets in question, and determine with input from the Director of Finance which city funds can be utilized to pay for the amount which is determined to be of general benefit.
Okay, any further questions or comments? I'd like to call for a vote, and we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Elaine.
Yes.
Craig?
So,
I'll skip you. Jack?
Yes.
Jack Lynch, yes.
then it's a moot point.
No, but express your opinion.
I know I have to vote, sir. This is a very complex issue in my opinion, so if you don't mind if I take a little time to digest this,
Fine.
I'd appreciate it. So by casting this vote, we're going to stall this process until the LOD engineer comes back and assess it for whatever apportionment would come to be. And then we're going to vote again to see if the city is going to accept not only the engineer's report, but the financial responsibility of the LOD streets.
Essentially, yes.
So by a yes vote, a majority vote tonight, we have then already admitted that we are going to take financial responsibility of the streets.
The question is in what proportion?
Then I say yes.
Okay. Okay, that's passed unanimously, 4-0, no abstentions. With that done, we'll move to item number 2. If anybody is inclined to leave at this point, please feel free to do so. We'd also encourage you to stay to hear the rest of the agenda.
We take maybe 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes.
We'll take a break. We'll take a break of 5 minutes, resuming at 7:15. Please take your seats, and we have a long agenda. We'll now move to item number 2 on our agenda. That's the SEI contract amendment, and we'll call on Suzanne Kuehl. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Suzanne. Maybe even I mispronounced your first name. I guess I got that all right. Suzanne Kuehl, who is from SEI Waste Connections.
Good evening, Mayor Lynch and council members. And we say our name, last name Keel, like the bottom of a boat.
Keel, okay.
But you got
Thank
Suzanne right. Thank you. We were here at your August 18th meeting, and at that time you adopted our proposed option number 1 to amend our contract with the City of Angels. And after your vote, you asked that we prepare the legal contract wording for your review. So we did that. We submitted it to your city attorney for his review. He did add 1 sentence toward the back, the end of the contract. And so we're here to answer any questions you may have on the wording of the amendment and hopefully to get your approval.
Comment?
Yeah.
Susan, I have one comment. I read I don't have an issue with any of the part of the contract with the exception of page 4. Item number 7. It reads, proposed additional services, SEI shall also provide or consider providing the following services. I'm not comfortable with the word consider.
I agree.
So if you take consider out, I'm a happy camper with this, because as we talked about it, as we're going to move into this long-term relationship, SEI was going to provide these additional services, and that was part of the whole discussion. So anyway, that's my comment to the council, is that I think that item 7 should read, proposed additional services, SEI shall also provide the following services.
You're right, Mr. Turco. I missed that. We already made the commitment to include those services.
Anyone else?
I don't have any questions of Suzanne. I just asked the attorney, are you happy with it? Yes.
Elaine?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, I have a concern about, we go back to the original proposal, and this was done before the sale was consummated. We were talking about adding consumer price index into the agreement, which would recognize a concept of being automatic and adjusted according to the costs of running your business. And now I'm looking at an addition, in addition to the CPI, the PPI being introduced. Now, the PPI looks specifically at fuel, which was the thing that really started all of these negotiations, because the price of fuel was going up, and then suddenly it started back down. And I believe that paragraph 4C does address that. And I have no problem with 4C, but I am really bothered by the fact of, in addition, including a factoring of the rates predicated on the consumer price index. If you look at the makeup of the consumer price index, that has a whole bunch of factors not at all related to running a business such as yours. Major portions is the cost of rent, the cost of housing, and many other things. And that was the reason that the original contract was not approved by the council, because it was a consumer price index which the council did not feel was relevant. And I object to seeing a consumer price index calculation included in addition to the fuel cost adjustment, which is going to be handled under a PPI, a producer price index calculation, which I think is really fine and addresses the automatic feature that was desired originally. Those are my comments. I disagree with 4B. I don't believe 4B should be in here.
Well, it is our hope that our rates in the future will be tied to a measurable index, something that is clear and something that you know and we know. As I said before, we would like to be a part of the City of Angels for a long time to come, and we felt that this was a transparent way to present ourselves, rather than to come to you and say, you know, we've had a bad year, or we need to purchase such and such equipment. You'll know exactly what our rates will be based on. And of course, you know that as part of this proposal, we will be decreasing the rates by 5.5% prior to the time that we even consider the CPI index and the PPI index for 2010.
Okay, those are my comments.
Well, but Jack, do you have, is there a different solution that we could?
I personally, you know, I was present in the original negotiations, and it was determined that the consumer price index was not a relevant factor, although both parties at that time felt that we should recognize and have some automatic feature that was adjusting the rate, and the focus really was on fuel and the way it was moving, rather than, and that's why the council did not approve the proposed wording of adjusting according to a consumer price index. And I think the fuel issue has been very well addressed in 4C, where you're using a producer price index and you're adjusting that, which eliminates a lot of the things that are in consumer price index, which are not relevant to running a trucking business. And then this 4C looks at the fuel costs, and I think it's an excellent
No, I understand that
4C.
part, but I mean, going back to the 4B, do you have a recommendation, or is there something we
I would feel that it should not be there at all.
Okay, but I think what Craig's asking, do you have a recommendation for something to replace it?
No, I say the consumer price index is not a relevant index to be included. The PPI, to looking and addressing at the fuel costs, is relevant. If wages of your employees are some issue, I think you need to be coming to the council and saying that as a separate item, not automatically indexed against the consumer price index, which is quite distant and disparate from running the type of business that you're running. It's not to say that that I am, as an individual, is not. I'm sympathetic to addressing it, but I don't think the consumer price index is a right item to be tracking the rates that our ratepayers pay, in addition to the fuel cost adjustment, which is a good item.
One of the topics that came up, and Susan, you remember this, and the guy was there at the time, is that we didn't want to burden the ratepayers with, you know, every 6 months or infrequent visits from you folks to the council saying, well, this is happening, so, you know, we're going to have to go up 3%. And so I know it's not a perfect animal, but that was a discussion that we had at the Personnel Finance. Do you have a heartburn about the CPI? I mean, if that wasn't in there, are you willing to just come to the council and say, hey, we need some more moolah?
We would very much like to see the CPI included. It is quite common with solid waste contracts with other cities and counties in California. It's a widely accepted measurement, and that is part of the proposal that we presented to you. Yes, we would like to see it remain.
Yeah, we approved that at Personnel and Finance.
I understand. I'm just expressing
Yeah, I know.
my opinion.
You have every right
It's
to.
all right with me if it stays in there, 4B.
One other comment that I have, on paragraph 6 in the agreement, that SEI, and please take what I'm saying, and don't take anything that I say as criticism, but just as an observation. You hereby agree that upon execution, it shall voluntarily decline and shall not seek to receive the 6.8% rate increase SEI would otherwise be entitled to receive under the agreement for 2009. I don't know where that 6.8% increase comes from, because I don't know how anything was agreed to make it an automatic 6.8%, because the previous negotiations were that the council did not accept the consumer price index adjustments. The only adjustment was on fuel, and the fuel adjustment was up, and then it was also stated that as the fuel price went down, the price would be reduced, and of course, as you know, the price was never reduced as the fuel price came down. So I don't agree that with the statement that's made that a 6.8% would have otherwise been applicable. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, that comes from your Plan B or C or whatever one we approved. What was that called? Plan what?
That was our first option.
Yeah, option
Option
one.
one.
Yeah, that you were taking that out, and that's what you're doing.
Taking the 5.5% out.
Right. Yeah. And we approved that under option one, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I understand that, but this is an additional 6.8% that is being voluntarily declined, and I don't know on what basis.
I think, to make things clear, excuse me, all we're saying is that we would be otherwise entitled to request a rate increase for 2009. We are not going to do that. And in addition to that, we are decreasing the rates by 5.5%.
Right.
That's all we're saying.
And at 6.8, was that in option one too?
6.8.
The 6.8 rate increase would otherwise be entitled to. That was in that option, wasn't it?
Yes.
I don't have
Yes.
a copy of it here, but that was in
It is.
We approved that too, didn't we, Craig, at Personnel Finance?
However, the council in prior contracts had not approved. I mean, this is a modification, amended contract, and the council had not previously agreed to that as a council. Yeah, I don't think it should. That paragraph 6 is I don't think should be in there either. Those are my observations.
What's your pleasure down there?
Okay.
Well, we need to go, Elaine, do you have a comment? Then we need to go to public comment.
Yeah. Public comments, please. How about you, Suzanne? Anything else you'd like to say to the council before we go to public comment?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If you have any additional questions, I'm here to answer them.
Public comments, please.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, there being none, we'll come back up here and we'll proceed with addressing the contract that we have before us.
Jack, you want to make a motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve the amended SEI Waste Connection contract as dated, no date, before us, with the amended item number 7 to read that SEI shall also provide the following services with the deletion of or consider providing.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the contract with the amendment of paragraph 7, would you please read that, Mary? Exactly what we've...
It was a motion to approve the amendment to the SEI Waste Connections contract with a correction or amendment to number 7, which would read, under proposed additional services, SEI shall also provide the following services at no additional charge with the following timeframes.
Okay, we'll call for a vote. I'll make a roll call. Elaine?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Jack Lynch, no. Okay, that's passed 3, 1, and no abstentions. Move now to item number 3, designation of a 15-minute parking space in front of 1267 South Main Street. That's the World Mercantile store. And I'll ask Dave Hannum to please give us the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you, again, as stated, the World Mercantile is requesting a 15-minute parking stall for local patrons. What? Oh, okay. For their local. Now I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Customers, thanks, Dale. And after doing a little bit of research, the city over time has had different timetables for downtown, whether it was 1-hour parking, 2-hour parking. There were some 15-minute, parking stalls down there, 15-minute parking throughout the zone, and so with that, at our regular planning commission meeting on September 10th. The commission held a public hearing to vote to discuss the merits of the project, and after much discussion, the planning commission voted 4-1, with the chairman voting no to adopt resolution 2009-18 for the installation of a 15-minute parking stall. I attached the draft; those are draft planning commission meetings because our meeting was 2 days later, and we'll be adopting those minutes. But I did include the minutes of the item as well as Chairman Coletto's statement regarding the item. So. With that, we brought it to the City Council, recommending approval to the City Council. The City Council voted 4-0 to continue the item for more information on the item, to make sure that, that we talked to Caltrans. They wanted to look at the previous meetings to see what the discussion was, as well as whether an ordinance would necessitate for this project. After doing the analysis, potentially I had done some site visits on the property. After doing some initial research, as stated in the previous City Council's staff report, tried to put limits to Main Street for the purpose of allowing tourists and local residents the ability to park on Main Street. Currently, there's approximately 40 on-site street parking stalls located on the east and west side of Main. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, staff has conducted site visits during different times of day to determine the best course of action. And during the weekdays, there seems to be ample parking along Main Street, along the whole course of Main Street. In the 2 site visits that I conducted, there were at least 50% parking available throughout the 2-block downtown area. The other 2 site visits were during theater times. During the theater times, I stayed after and to take a look and see what the theater does do after 5, and it does. It fills up on both sides of the street as well as the parking lot. However, there is a couple of spots here and there throughout the district that's still available, but the majority of the spots, including in front of the World Mercantile, those spots are all taken up. In terms of during the weekend, I was here on a weekend. It was on a personal note. It wasn't on a professional note, but on a personal note, visiting the city. I did notice that there was a lot of parking on Main Street, but it looked like most of the people were tourists. There was a lot of in and out, people coming and going. There wasn't a lot of stationary cars. It was just a lot of people moving around. I contracted the local office of Caltrans, and basically what would be requirements. Spoke to Robert Hoffman. He's the local district engineer. He informed me that it would just be that the applicant would have to come in and apply for it's a minor encroachment permit to paint the street curb and to put up the sign, and that it would be processed through his office, so it wouldn't have to necessarily go through the district all the way through all the district stuff. and he informed me that it would take approximately a couple of weeks. I also looked in our city ordinance to see, because that was an issue that came up as part of what an ordinance revision. This ordinance, section number 10.20.010, states, it gives the city authority to establish 15-minute parking stalls, and so the answer to the ordinance is there. It's just we would need to adopt a resolution that would be consistent with that, with the ordinance. So with the analysis that I've completed in the minutes, the staff is recommending that the City Council adopt Resolution 2009-18 approving a 15-minute parking space in front of the World Mercantile, included as part of Exhibit A, the conditions of approval that we included as part of the project. So if you have any questions of staff, that concludes my staff report, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for
Question, Dave, is this from 9 to 5, 8 to 5, or forever?
Well, I
Is it
mean,
a 6-month trial thing?
Based on the condition, it's a 6-month trial, and I would say that we follow the ordinance. It's a 9 to 5. That's what the ordinance calls for in terms of the section 10.20.10. So
7 days a week?
From what the ordinance says, yeah, based on the attachment, it just says 9 to 5. Let's pull it real quick, just so that. On any day except Sundays and holidays. So.
Any other questions for?
Do you know if they were able to get
Can you all hear Elaine? Can you hear? Okay, good.
Do you know if they've been able to get the encroachment permit from Caltrans?
Well, they were waiting for our approval first before they would have. They didn't, because there is a cost associated with the encroachment permit. So they were waiting first for the city to, if the city would allow it, then they would proceed with doing that.
David, I've got two memos here dated September 8th,
Okay.
but they're different.
Two memos, please.
One from last council meeting and one from this one. This is a summary. This is more embellished. Similar
Right.
wording, but they're exact same dates. Is it a different memo? Did you include a new memo?
Well, I included.
I'm trying to understand, because this is what we had, what we reviewed at the last council meeting.
Right, right.
This is what we have now with the same date.
No, that's the date of the report. The date on top is
Date
September
8th.
5th.
Both of them are identical, September 15th, September 8th.
Oh, they're both September 15th.
Yeah.
Oh, that was.
Okay, well,
that was just,
it's more because there's embellished information or more information in here.
right. That's the one that should have, unless it was attached to a different staff report. I mean,
I'll show this to you in a minute, but I have a couple.
What's that?
That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. I have a question.
Okay.
If it's a trial period, what is your benchmark? What do you measure? What are you going to look at the end of 6 months?
Well, what's going to happen is after 6 months, I'll be getting back with the World Mercantile, and to see how it worked for them, and if it didn't work, or if there were issues with the police department that there were people violating it, then we'll come back to the council and recommend to remove the spot. So after the 6 months, it was a trial basis to see if it would work for the merchant for getting their takeout orders. If it's something that isn't effective, then we will take it out. If it's something that it becomes a major issue, whether it's a traffic issue or or the World Mercantile feels it hasn't done anything for our business, then we'll take it out. But it will come back to the council for a final.
I wanted to know what your criteria was, what you're going to be checking off to see what's working. I mean, how are you going to measure if it's working for the mercantile or not? How many people use it? Because it's not going to be enforced by the police department, so they're not going to come in and tag anybody.
Well, I think those are things that I'm just going to keep my tabs on and working with. I'll be scheduling updates with the World Mercantile to see how it's working with them, because this item will be coming back to you for quote a permanent space. We're only asking for a 6 months trial in this resolution, and so that's kind of what that's.
And in the public comment in the draft notes from the planning commission meeting, there's a question here. If the city grants this, Will the city also grant all other businesses a 15-minute parking space that has takeout services?
Well, I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but I'll be following the same processes that I followed with this, and bring it to the planning commission, and bring it to the city council, and move forward that way.
Well, once we open the door, I mean, we'd have to, I mean, I don't know how you would deny it.
Well, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, it's.
I'm just being realistic.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and say that, yeah, there will probably be businesses that will be coming forward that will ask for this same type of request.
And just so everybody knows, I'm pro-business here, but I don't know I'm pro-business the right way. And I want to encourage economic development, but, and I made this statement at the last city council meeting, I'm not so certain that the branding leadership team and ACPA, when they talk about bringing in tourists, they're looking for 15-minute tourists. And my problem is that, and it was noted in your first memo, that we have an issue of downtown parking as it is, which is a bigger picture that we need to address, and I recognize that. I have a hard time understanding the logic of satisfying locals to stop in, taking a space downtown in prime location, because everybody wants to park downtown, to satisfy the establishment. I wish the establishment well, and I think if the locals like that food, they're going to go there, whether they park up in Raspberry or park across behind Sue's or park down by the thrift shop. I don't like setting a precedent, because you are going to open up a can of worms, in my opinion. And we went through
Another one.
Okay.
Well,
that's fine. I'm bringing an applicant.
We're going to set a precedent, and I went through the different. I went through the different merchants that are available to have that could use an in and out type of thing. So I know that it's an unpopular decision. I'm just, in my opinion, it's not the right thing to do.
Okay.
I think we need to take a look at the bigger picture and not set a precedent. But that's my opinion, and I'm only 1 of 4. So
that's fine.
I don't have any further questions. Let's open it up for public comments, please. Public comments on having a...
My husband said I should really put duct tape over this. Gladys Dillashaw, 714 Purdy Road. I have to agree with this. You're opening up the can of worms, which people didn't like before that I said. But there are other businesses that might want to let me go into Turner's Wild West and only spend 15 minutes and buy my husband a shirt and come out. But if we're going to have 15-minute parking, then the police has to be down there and assure themselves that these people are only going to park for 15 minutes. So that means the policeman's going to be there marking with chalk. Are you going to be able to do this?
There's a question. Is it going to be enforced? What's the question? What's the answer to that?
Is it going to
David.
be
Well,
enforced? And if not, then why have 15-minute parking?
I don't. I mean, if I want to go down there and chalk, I mean, I don't have a citation issue, but
it's not intended. In
yeah.
the previous discussion, it's not intended to be enforced. We had a comment from the owner, and it's not unlike the controversy in terms of smoking in the parks. The question was, what do you want to put a sign up, no smoking near the kids' play areas in the park? Who's going to enforce it? And the answer is people. And if somebody is abusing it, someone might speak to a person and say, hey, you know, that's a 15-minute zone. Why don't you park over there? And we're not, in my estimation, based on prior discussions, in no way are we looking to have a program of enforcement.
Right.
And that's one of the ground rules. And that's perfectly acceptable to the person that's requesting it. Right. So I just want everyone to understand that. Okay.
Hi, I'm Michelle Lee, 6035 Gorby Ranch Road, and I believe that this is a good thing for downtown. It's only one space There are plenty of spaces to park in. As of the report, 50% of the parking spaces are available on a regular basis. So it's not going to deter the tourists that the brand leadership team is trying to bring in, or ACPA, or any other organization that is working on developing Angels Camp as a destination. It is to help our locals and to come in and out quickly so that that spot is available. I think that with the 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., it is very doable. It doesn't mess up with any of the movie schedules, and Sundays and holidays, fine. It's not really going to necessarily affect anybody. And if you go up to Murphy's and you look at some of the signs that are up there on their no parking zones and their different time frames, it's not policed, and people respect that. It's the honor system. People like to be honorable, and they're not necessarily going to camp out in front of the World Mercantile and stay there all day. You know, you might have one case out of 100 that's going to do that. Most people like to respect the laws. So I think that even if it does set a precedence, I think it is a good precedence. And there is space for other opportunities down there to redesign the parking to make flow of traffic and other parking situations better than they are now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. John Broder, 1860 Finnegan Lane. I think this thing about a precedent is false. You already have 2 20-minute parking limit signs on streets in your town already. They're not enforced. As far as I know, I don't see the police down there marking tires, and it hasn't caused any controversy as yet. They are next to the visitor center, between the visitor center and Clausen's Bar, and they've been here since I've been here, which is only 5 years. So I think that's a non-issue.
Any other public comment?
This is not a campaign statement for Steve DeFoo. I was going to make the same comment about the fact that there are 2 20-minute parking spaces already there, and they've been there. I've been here in the city over 18 years, and they've been here that length of time. Councilman Turco's comments about the 15-minute parking. I have gone on record saying that I think all parking spaces on Main Street ought to be 15-minute. I've gone on record saying that theater goers need to park behind Susie's Cafe next to the visitor center, or up off of Raspberry Street behind the Mercantile, where Nikki's employees park. Also, I believe that if you had 15-minute parking, you wouldn't have store owners parking in front of their storefronts and other people's storefronts. And thus you would have more business downtown, and we'd have better economic development and more tourism. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Good evening. Rick Downey, 817 Smith Flat Road. My feeling on the 15-minute parking, the one thing the city may consider is not take it upon as a personal request, and take it upon yourself to determine where you'd like to have 15-minute parking. And if you took it upon yourself to do that, then you're not setting a precedent for one person so everybody else could ask. You decide you'd like to try it, because it is a trial basis, correct? And the trial has to be based on a couple things. I can't imagine the owner who's sitting right here and probably deserves to have that parking. I can't believe in 6 months she's going to actually come to you and say, oh, darn, that's just not working. It's going to be the city that's going to decide if it's not working, and most likely the city's not going to do anything because they don't know if it's working or not. So I would say, why don't the city take it upon themselves, one, to start formulating a parking plan down in the downtown, and the second thing is, if they can't address the overall issue, Why not look at it and go, yeah, 15-minute parking is viable, but it's going to be our little baby. We're going to decide where some 15-minute parking is and see how it works out. That way, there's not a precedent set for others to come to you and ask for individuals, so then all of a sudden we have a hodgepodge of 15-minute parking. Thank you.
Okay. Any further public comments? We'll come back up here.
I
Yes, David.
just have one comment. The Transportation and Circulation Committee will be deciding on their priorities, their top priorities for 2010 years, kind of like we did with the Planning Commission. And the parking study for the downtown is one of the top priorities that those commissioners have recommended. So.
And why don't you elaborate a little bit on that group?
The Transportation and Circulation Committee is a 7-member committee that discusses circulation issues and transportation traffic issues within the city limits, as well as in our general plan area. And that committee meets the second Thursday at 5 o'clock. And we will be, after we start after we make our recommendations, we'll be coming to the council at the next meeting to have the council sign off on the implementation measures of the general plan regarding circulation. So I just wanted to say that parking in the downtown study is going to be one of the higher priorities.
We'd finished public comment, but I see 2 people have stood up, and I'd like to allow them to speak. Public comment?
My name's John Broder again. I'm the chairman of the Traffic and Circulation Committee, and we passed a recommendation on to the City Council at least 2 months ago to recommend that the City Council grant the World Mercantile 1 15-minute parking space.
Yeah. And also, you're going to be looking at the total parking picture, yes, which is considerable undertaking. Yes. Final comment, please.
Hi, yes, my name is Nikki Robison. I'm the general manager of the World Mercantile. Thank you, Mr. Broder, for that clarification, although it was 4 months ago that occurred. Well, it's kind of hard to believe it's been that long. But I appreciate everyone's comments. I'm very grateful for the consideration and the consideration of that of the community. I was compelled to stand up when I heard about the Transportation and Traffic Circulation Committee looking at the entire parking picture. I was astonished yesterday to see that on Raspberry and Main Street, the 4 parking spots that had formerly been there are now something called a passenger loading zone. And I wondered how that occurred, how we lost 4 parking spots catty-corner from the Visitors Bureau, just it seemed like the blink of an eye. And I wondered whether or not they too had to fill out encroachment applications with the Caltrans, and whether they had to do that at their own expense. So I just wanted everyone to know that it didn't go unnoticed that 4 parking spots disappeared there on Raspberry and Main Street. But thank you very much for looking at what's in front of you, and I appreciate it. We expect that all will go well, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Any other questions up here? Are we ready for a vote?
Yeah.
We have before us a resolution 09-42. Entertain a motion that we proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve resolution 09-41, a resolution approving
42. I've got 42 here.
I am. It says 41 on here.
On the resolution itself, it says
well, what is it, 41 or 42? One of those?
Yes, I would change it. It will be either 41 or 43.
41 and a half.
41 and a half.
One document calls it 09-42.
I will make that correction.
Okay.
A resolution approving a 15-minute parking stall located in front of the World Mercantile at 1267 South Main Street.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Been moved by Councilman Boating to adopt resolution 09-41 and seconded by Elaine Morris. A call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstain? It goes 3-1-0. Moving along to item number 4, Angels Camp Business Association Holiday Parade. Bob Maneri.
Bob Maneri, President of Angels Camp Business Association. First of all, I forgot on my other part, and I hope you don't mind. October 12th, Monday, next Monday, we'll be having candidates will speak at camps, and that'll start at 5:30, and the program will start at 6. Candidates for City Council. The resolution 9.-40 is on December 5th. The Angels Camp Business Association will be holding our 19th annual holiday parade. This year, we'll be going from Murphy's Grade Road all the way down to the intersection of Highway 49 and Vallecito Road. This will be the longest and hopefully the best parade ever. With your vote on this resolution, 9-40, the parade will go on.
Okay. Any questions? Public comment? Yeah.
Call for the vote.
No,
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve resolution 09-40, approving the Angels Camp Business Association Annual Holiday Parade. The longest and best ever.
Okay, it's been moved by Jack Boating to adopt resolution 09-40, seconded by Councilmember Turco. I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained. That carried 4-0-0. Good job, Bob.
Magnificent.
Item number 5, water treatment plant fourth filter improvement project. Gary Gio.
Yes, as discussed, I believe it was 2 council meetings ago, we have completed the design on the water treatment plant project now. So I asked this be put on the agenda so the council can give me direction on how you want to proceed from this point. The plans and specifications are completed, and we could go out to bid next week if that's the council's decision tonight. One thing I did want to make sure the council was aware of, and I don't know if it's been discussed, based on discussions with Tim Shear, the portion of the project we're going to be bidding does not include the electrical. All the electrical work would be done by Bruce Whittle Electric, who's the city's electrical contractor. And the reason that decision was made when we started this process is Bruce designed the electrical system up at that plant 2 expansions ago. So it didn't make sense to go and try and hire somebody else to do it. And so I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that we're not, full exposure or whatever you want to call it here again. So
Transparency.
Transparency, yes. So, and
How will that electrical work be covered then?
he just bills the
time
city
and
directly. It's just
materials?
time and material. He will actually provide the city with a proposal for doing all the work and cost on it. So,
Okay.
but like I said, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
Any questions for Gary? Public comment?
Bob Maneri, 312 Catalpa. Question on the electrical. Is he going to give you a proposal? You said he's going to do a time material, but he's going to give you a proposal. So which is it?
He will be giving me a written proposal. I haven't worked out with him yet whether it will be time and materials or fixed cost. We're still in the process of actually defining exactly what he's going to do, which we should be done in the next day or 2, because some of that has been up in the air because of the changes at the last minute with some of the items in the project. So.
Okay.
Steve DeFew, 576 Sasa. Does this contradict what we've accomplished the last city council meeting where we're going to get bids over competitive bids over a certain amount cost? And I don't know when Gary talked to Tim Shear. Is this before he left or after he left? Or
It was before we actually started the design of the project, because it had a direct relation to how we designed the project and the amount of effort that was put into the electrical portion of the design of the project. So,
are you telling me that the electrician complimented you in that design?
no, that's not.
Okay, so he didn't have any physical part of the design, right?
How do I say it? He aided us in Well, I should say, actually he didn't. Ecologic did all the design work. Bruce was at the last meeting trying to figure out exactly what portion he was going to do compared to the contract. And you know, Carol's here, she can talk about it too in the past history on this.
I would love to hear the city council discuss this in regards to what you accomplished in controlling the bids and the amount of bids and the transparency of bids, and how we can allow that to be passed over in this instance. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? We'll bring it back up here for consideration. The background on this fourth filter, we've talked about it extensively in the facilities and infrastructure, and we also talked about it at city council meetings. The idea here is that right now we're not having any exceedances. Our water consumption has dropped 12 to 14% during the past year after we have repaired a leaky pipe. And I'm personally on record as saying that I don't feel like we should be going forward with adding a fourth filter to increase our capacity when our utilization has dropped below the values that were in past years. However, I think it's very important that we go ahead and have everything in place so that we're able to act on it and promptly when the council is to the point where they feel as though we need to act on it. And so that's the reason that we've done all the engineering work, all the design work, and now we're going to proceed with going out and getting bids so the council is fully aware of what the costs are, and then we can have further discussions about it. I just want to put that background information out there. How about the council's feeling on going forward with this and any modification relative to the electrical? Incidentally, the council just learned of that tonight. We were not aware of that.
That's why I didn't know if you had.
No, we were not aware of that aspect to it. Anybody like to make a motion?
Well, I don't, before we go on to the motion, Gary, I kind of heard you a little bit different explanation of the electrician. I mean, doesn't sound like Mr. Whittle was involved at the onset of this, as you initially said.
No. The decision, you know, in the discussions with Tim before we started this project, as I stated, on all the previous projects that we've done at the water plant, Bruce Whittle did all the electrical work exactly the same as we're talking about right now. He is totally familiar with everything. Basically, he designed the PLC system and everything else up there. It made no sense at that time to go and redesign it all in a set of engineering plans, which would have significantly increased the cost of the design, and then put it out to bid when Bruce would have been cheaper no matter what. So at that time, again, Tim directed me to continue with the same process the city did on the previous two projects, have Bruce Whittle provide the electrical work that he wanted to provide. The rest of the work would be put out to bid for a general contractor to do. So that is the approach that we took from day one in the design process.
Well, if we made the stipulation that the schematics for the electricity or the electrical part was as designed, and if Bruce is going to, is it Bruce?
Yeah, it's Bruce.
If Bruce is going to bid in on it anyway and come in low, why don't we give him that opportunity and be consistent with what we agreed on in terms of the bidding process? I mean, the comment from the public was accurate in as much as we did take the time to go through that process. We want the lowest bid. We wanted to have a number of bids. If you're confident he's going to come in low anyway.
Well, Craig, the difference is, you know, and I understand, believe me, I understand what you're saying. I just do what I'm directed by the city. The difference is the cost of the design. The electrical design that is in the improvement plans now to put out to bid is not sufficient to have a contractor bid all the work, an electrical contractor to bid the job. We would have to go back and spend the additional engineering funds to do the design in detail enough, the plans and specifications, for an outside electrical contractor to bid the job on a competitive basis. It was not set up that way from day one, so it's not there right now. If the council wishes to do that, we can go back and do it, but you know, it's going to take time. We won't be able to build this project this way.
And what kind of money are we talking about?
You know, I'd have to get a quote. You're probably in the neighborhood, it wouldn't surprise me, $30,000 to $40,000.
So if we're consistent with what we did with the bidding process, your estimation is it's gonna cost us between 30 to 40K.
Craig, don't hold me to that. I will
No, I
have to get,
understand,
but
I
yes.
have to have a number.
Yeah,
I mean, you
sure.
gotta give me something.
Yeah, well,
Okay, so anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000
sure.
to go outside of what we agreed on in terms of consistency in the bidding process.
To meet what you have in your current bidding process, yes.
And we don't have any other projects where we've made commitments in
No,
have we?
this is the only one. And like I said, it had always been done this way, and Tim made the decision, to continue on with the same process as it's always been used in the past. And, and Bruce is the city's electrical contractor. It's not like we're just going out to give somebody a job. He does all the electrical work on both the wastewater plant and the water plant for repairs and maintenance and.
Well, I'm not picking on him.
I just want to make sure, Bruce is above reproach. I just want to make,
I'm not questioning
this
that.
isn't coming from him.
If you, just as a comment, if you go through the water or wastewater, particularly the water plant, every control feature in there is Bruce Whittle's workmanship, and it is workmanship. However, I personally feel that in light of this development, I personally feel that you owe the council an opportunity to hear what Bruce's idea is of the amount, so that we could get a sense of what you're talking about financially. If it's a number that seems reasonable, I think we could incorporate that as an amendment to the bidding process, because like it's been mentioned, the bidding process is something that we want to be doing for the benefit of the citizens of the city, and I completely concur that Bruce Whittle will most likely be a low bidder, because he has particular knowledge of all of the prior installations, and this is an additional filter into the existing system. So it would be greatly surprised if that wasn't
So you want
a low price.
You want to put it over? Can we get it?
I think that I'd like to see us do that. I'd like to continue this item number 5, if I may. Yes.
We don't have any deadlines now for this, do we?
We're getting close, aren't we?
We're almost out of time already. I'm going to have to shorten the bidding period to a month in order to get this constructed.
Can he get us something within,
before
before the next meeting?
I will have to talk to Bruce, hopefully he can, yes.
Yeah, because I think we should do that too.
That's fine. That's your call. That's why I brought it up tonight.
Specifically then, what direction are we giving to Gary, contrary to the instructions that he had previous?
Get a bid from Bruce, bring it back to us with the whole thing.
Okay. All right, that acceptable to the council members? All right. Item number 6, we pulled that, as you mentioned earlier. Number 7, call for transportation projects to be funded through COG as part of their overall work program of 2010-2011. Item number 7, and the general, can you tell us generally what your recommendation is?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As the council is aware, each and every year the COG has a call for projects. Over the years, the city engineer, the city administrator have gotten together, and the planning directors have gotten together to determine some projects that would be beneficial to the city. We would then bring those projects in a priority manner to the city council, in which they would prioritize those projects and make a recommendation for us to take to the COG for our number 1 projects. We did this last year. We took 7 projects to the COG, and at that time the council selected the PSR for the roundabout for Angel Oaks and Foundry Lane. We since changed that, so this is basically the same the starting of the process, the call for projects. So we wanted to let the council know, to basically direct staff to start brainstorming some projects to bring back to the council meeting at their regular meeting on November 3rd. And if there are projects that the council has that they feel that it's a priority, and we could probably get you what was done last year in terms of, I don't know if you guys have them already, but take a look at last year's, and then we'll be looking at other items so that we can make an official recommendation to COG because the call, I think that's in, is Melissa still here? Yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, I think we'll be discussing this at the TAC at the December meeting. Yeah, we'll be discussing, what's that? The December meeting, right? Yeah. Yeah.
They'll be considered by doctors before they're taken to the council the second week in December for review and adoption.
Right.
For the benefit of the audience, Melissa, could you tell everyone who you are? Because this is one of the COG staff members.
Melissa Eves with the Calaveras Council of Governments.
Thank you.
So basically, staff's just looking for direction from the council to start working on these projects and start putting some projects together so that we can bring those back to the council.
I would suggest you get, Elaine and I both have copies of last year's, but get a fresh copy to the rest of the council so they can take a look at it and see what those are. And to find who's going to be in your staff group, who's going to, I mean, you and...
I mean, right now, last year was Tim, Gary, and I. We're down one. And so Gary and I would be getting together and putting together some ideas regarding what for projects that would be funded. So we'll be taking a look at our general plan again, taking a look at our implementation measures in terms of transportation and see what and if there are regional projects that we might be able to piggyback from the county, look at some other things.
What was that? A while ago, I recall a comment being made that the funding, there was lack of funding, and it looked like there would be only like one project possibility for the City of Angels. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah, most of the money would be going to the RTP. However, we want to make sure.
Why don't you just use the words? Explain RTP for
I'm sorry. The RTP is the Regional Transportation Plan. That's the countywide.
Major, every 5-year project, right. And it's going to probably consume all the monies that they have given to them.
A lot of monies, yeah.
But
we still want to get our projects in and right. Participate in that.
All right.
So that's, I mean, there's really.
Okay. So go ahead.
All right.
Any public comment on projects? Thank you. Craig?
In the spirit of cooperation that the council has talked about time and time again about the public being involved and seeing the fact that only David and Gary are now on that committee, maybe the council could consider appointing somebody from the public to serve on that committee. Thank you.
I have one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Ray, this is where we put the Angels Creek Trail thing on.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Okay. And you'll come back on November 3rd?
Mm-hmm. With the staff's recommendation in terms of...
And you and whoever else you get, right?
That's right.
Input from John Broder's group?
Yeah, we'll be taking it to the Traffic Circulation Committee. I mean, we did that last time as part of that. I think we did that last time as part of the process. Did we review the COG priorities? I don't know if we did or we didn't.
This is transportation group for the city. Really, you got to really. There's a good cross section of personalities in that group. Reinforcing George Fry's concern, you've got 4 people.
Yeah, I think we did last year. I think we did take it to circulation before it came. I'm not positive, but
I'm not sure we ever did.
I don't know if we did. I don't know.
No.
I think those.
Right. Traffic circulation.
Just make sure the group has the parameters of what they're looking for.
Right.
And maybe Melissa can help with that. I know you have that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're moving now to...
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Good.
What exactly is the direction?
Basically, Gary and I will be putting together a list of projects and bring those forward.
At the November 3rd meeting.
For the November 3rd meeting.
And it would involve John Broder's group, Traffic and Circulation input. Moving on now to item number 8, amendment to a zoning ordinance. This has to do with introducing ordinance number 439, and David Hannum will speak to us on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you, you have a zoning ordinance text amendment, and this is the first reading and waiving of the ordinance number, I think it's 439. And basically what we're doing is we're updating the definitions chapter of the zoning ordinance. As the council is aware, we just adopted our general plan in February, and as a part of that, there are a lot of changes. Because of the new general plan, there needs to be a lot of changes to the zoning ordinance, all the chapters of the zoning ordinance. And the definitions is one of them. This chapter hasn't been really touched probably about 10, 15 years, except for maybe a couple here and there. The Planning Commission and a subcommittee of the Planning Commission took these and made a much more comprehensive list and more to more be in tune with what's happening out there in the planning world. At the July, just kind of some background, the Planning Commission adopted a resolution of intent to do this, and at the May 7th Planning Commission, they reviewed a portion of the definitions. At the July 9th, the Planning Commission reviewed the remainder of the definitions and made comments and suggested changes, and those have all been incorporated in what you have tonight. At the September 10th, 2009 regular Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission adopted Resolution 2009-17, recommending to the City Council the changes to Title 17, Chapter 9 definitions. So, again, this is a way of bringing our general plan, our zoning ordinance in compliance with our general plan. And staff is recommending that the city waive the first reading and introduce Ordinance 439 and set the public hearing date for the ordinance. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer the questions. If you want to go through each and every one of them.
Questions for?
I don't have a question. I do have a request.
Yes, sir.
To add two definitions. One would be a real estate office, and the other would be a definition of what I'll just call it a low-profile cellular antenna. And the real estate office is born out of a situation that took place a couple of years ago, where under the use permit, retail sales was mentioned as part of it. So I'd like to have a definition of a real estate office. And so when we get into the zoning and the applications, that is clearly spelled out, so we don't have the same kind of situation we did with putting a real estate office in a residential neighborhood. The low-profile cellular antenna has to do with an item that came before the Planning Commission, I want to guess about a year ago, 2 years ago, that had to do with a cellular provider wanting to put an antenna inside of a dwelling to allow for better coverage in the downtown area, because I guess a lot of cellular providers don't have the coverage downtown, and the ordinances don't allow for that. They're pretty specific about outside kind of mass. So I'd like to put that in there. I can give you I can clarify the low-profile cellular antenna, but I'd like to make a request of the council that those two be added as definitions. In my opinion, when you're talking about zoning, you can't have enough definitions. So that's my request.
I especially agree with the low-profile antenna, because that's really been a problem.
Okay.
I know what a real estate office looks like.
Define it.
Yeah, define it's another story. Yeah.
Elaine, any questions?
No.
I think that the job that's been done, because I went back and compared the previous to this, it's a stellar effort. And I happen to notice, for example, the restaurant fast food definition. It's a subtle kind of a thing, but it was changed to add consumed on or off the premises. The old definition was consumed off the premises. But if you know what fast food restaurants are like, there's some people stay in the place and others leave. So I commend you for what you're doing. I would be completely in favor of the request that we've gotten from Craig with respect to the real estate office and the low profile antenna. Is that easily done for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can, I mean, if the planning commission, I mean, what I
You have
could
to
do.
come through go through the,
Well,
commission
what I would like to
as an
do
agenda.
what I'd like to do is maybe work with at least the subcommittee that I had and to bring this back. I mean, I think, and I don't know if Richard, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if they can still waive the first reading, introduce the ordinance, set the public hearing, and then I can bring all that back for the public hearing, right?
I think you're making a significant amount of change that you probably need to go back.
To the planning commission? Okay.
For the
So,
two additions?
okay, so what I'll do is I'll just take that, I'll take it back to the planning commission for next month's meeting, and then,
The ordinance been that way.
what do you mean?
No, these are
20.
additions.
These are brand new.
For many years, the ordinance has been deficient,
Yeah.
correct? So what's the hurry?
Well, I mean, no, I'm just asking the question. I mean, because
You also might-
if it were two definitions, I mean, if you want to go back, I have no problem taking it
I
back.
think
I was
it's
just
appropriate
questioning.
to go back.
Okay.
It's
And I
been
should
in
also,
place 15 years.
Yes.
So it's,
Hurry is U-Haul trucks and trailers.
No, I have no problem taking it back to, if that's what the council's direction is, and I'll take it back
So
to the
you-
planning
you-
commission.
So we're not gonna act on this tonight?
No.
we can't keep this is meant to be a waiving the first reading, introduce ordinance, setting a public hearing date.
but what you're doing, Mayor, is changing the text of the ordinance.
Okay.
It's not just a clerical change, it's actually adding a couple of definitions.
Okay.
So it's important enough to go back. If it was an urgency matter, then we could talk about adopting it as an urgency ordinance, but because it's not, better practice is to go back and
Not a problem. We'll take it back to next month's planning commission, and we'll bring it forward.
Continue it tonight, huh?
Any other additions by any council member or any other staff?
No.
Okay. Move now to item number 9. Amendment to sign ordinance. And this is introducing ordinance number 440.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Here we go again. Basically, signs have been a very interesting topic over the last couple of months. With that, our sign ordinance is very deficient in a lot of different ways in trying to regulate how we manage signs. There have been just a number of discussions with the BLT. There's been different ideas thrown around us for signage in the historical area. There have been a number of violations up and down Main Street. And really all the commercial areas are in some way in violation of the sign ordinance. The idea is to create a more definitive ordinance, to create this is what you can do in these areas type of ordinances. Staff has worked with a subcommittee which is made up of 2 planning commissioners and myself, and going through with the initial set of definitions. We sent this out to the BLT, ACPA, the County Chamber of Commerce, to review and comment if they had any comments or definitions. There were none. And then the Planning Commission, at their July 9th meeting, or actually at their September meeting, recommended the city ordinance, or recommended to the city council an ordinance for an upgrade in the sign definitions. Staff is recommending tonight that you waive the first reading and introduce ordinance number 440, and recommending that we waive the first reading and set the public hearing for an ordinance. If you have any questions or any items.
Questions for? I have a couple of questions. On item number 48, a non-conforming sign. It says the term non-conforming sign shall mean any sign installed prior to the adoption of the ordinance codified in this chapter, which does not meet the specification and requirements of this chapter. I would think that is kind of a very, very narrow definition. You can have non-conforming signs that I think would be installed after this date. Why are you excluding those kinds of things from fitting a definition of a non-conforming sign?
Because any sign that would be adopted after this ordinance goes into place would have to follow the ordinance that's there. The non-conforming portion of those are signs that are there existing. You allow the existing businesses to keep what they have. However, if they modify it, if they try to make it bigger, if they take it down for 30 days and want to try to put it back up, at that point, then it becomes, they would have to follow the rest of the sign ordinance. So it gives business owners a chance to use their existing stuff. However, anything new would have to come forth in front of the ordinance.
But if
So
someone
that's why.
put up a sign that was non-conforming next week, next month, what would you call that sign?
Well, that would be a non-conforming, as long as
But
you.
it wouldn't fit this definition.
But it would, because it would go in before the ordinance takes effect. So anything that's approved prior
Say
to.
next year you got somebody put up a sign that's non-conforming, what are you going to call it?
The sign wouldn't be non-conforming, it would just be it would be, go through the
Be an
regular.
illegal sign.
It would be a legal sign going through the permit process. The
And
similar.
Do you have a definition of an illegal sign?
Yes, there is a definition of an illegal sign.
I was going to, the reason why I'm bringing it up, I was going to add, or any sign which does not meet the specifications.
Yeah,
In other words, you're grandfathering all the old ones, but
Right.
any new sign that doesn't meet the spec. But you have an illegal sign in here?
Yeah, definition number 39.
Okay.
The term illegal sign shall mean signs that, and their supporting members which do not.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
That takes care of that. I didn't notice that
Why
one.
don't you just tell them that to begin with?
Hey, wait a minute. Question, temporary sign, very, very significant change in that wording.
Yes.
And that originally, in the old definition up until right now, says 90 days.
Right.
The new definition says 30 days.
Mhm.
And I'm sure it was deliberately selected by the planning commissioners.
Yeah.
I bet you had a lot of discussions about that.
Yeah, that was a big item.
Because of the banners, right?
Well, because of the banners and other temporary signs that go up, the banners, the A-frames, those are all technically temporary signs. The signs that are on poles, like in the downtown, there's businesses that have little signs on the poles. Those are really temporary type signs. So we really wanted to crack down, on the banners. The Planning Commission right now is taking a look at the temporary sign ordinance portion, which is on their agenda, in fact, in 2 days, to discuss, what's a temporary sign, how long can you use it, the full regulation of it. And that will include real estate signs, that will include construction signs. So it's getting a lot more comprehensive in what and where these signs are and how they're to be used. So.
Keep in mind, it takes 2 years to sell a house nowadays.
Sure. I'll give that a month.
One thing that caught my attention is a political sign can only be there for 30 days? Is that what this means?
We are considering a temporary sign, or a political sign, a temporary sign. However, when we amend the temporary sign ordinance, there are specific instructions on what you can do with political signs.
Because they have a prescribed time period where they're allowed.
Yeah, and that's still the city.
It's not 30 days.
No, it's 7 days.
Yeah, I'm aware of it, and it's not 30 days.
No. I mean, the sign ordinance, the temporary sign ordinance will distribute on how that sign is.
Those are my questions. Comments.
I have none.
Elaine? Greg?
We have to go to public comment now?
Yeah. Public comment. I think one of the things that disappoints me a lot, because we talk about it, is the participation by the various businesses. And this was sent out, and Dave has commented, there were no comments from business owners about signs, which really surprises me. And
I think the next one we'll be receiving a lot of comments, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon?
On the next, because I'll be sending the temporary sign portion definitions, or that sign out. I think the businesses will be commenting on that one for sure.
Okay, but the
Ordinance that was sent to us was the original, not the revised. We have not seen any of the revised.
I can't hear you, please. Can you come forward? I just, as a point of information, why none of the organizations responded? Not even no comment, but nothing.
The information that Michelle Lee, Angels and Motel, we received the original ordinance and the original definitions and have not seen the revised definitions. So once there is an opportunity to see these revised definitions, I'm sure there will be some comment. At least I myself have not seen the revised definitions.
So you didn't
Thank you.
circulate the revised?
Well, we sent out the condition, when the planning commission, when we reviewed the conditions, we sent out what the planning commission looked at, and then we sent those out. So there might have been, I mean,
Proposed changes that we're looking at here?
right, and there were some additional comments made at the planning commission meeting that we put together. So if we want to send them out again, I have no problem doing that, but.
We have, before the council members, we have the original signed definitions, and then we have the proposed package of new, and we also had that in the preceding section in terms of definitions.
But there's more coming, right?
Not for definitions. I mean, there's going to be more, there'll be more amendments to the sign ordinance that will be coming out within probably the next 2 weeks.
Mr. Mayor, we haven't received anything in the last 2.5 months on this Bombinary Angels Camp Business Association. It's been about 2.5 months that we received anything.
It says here, staff sent the signed definitions to the BLT Chamber of Commerce, ACPA. Staff gave each of the entity 30 days to respond and make comments. None of the agencies responded with any comments. That's what we're seeing as a council. That's why I'm asking the question, why businesses had no comments on something. Signs are pretty important. And it just surprised me as to why there were no comments.
Well, they said more was coming, so we haven't received anything else in the last 2.5 months.
How were they sent out?
They were sent out to the chair. They were sent out to the leaders of those agencies. They were sent out to Ann Forrest. They were sent out to Bob Maneri. Well, actually, that was a mistake. It went to Ann Forrest. She wanted a copy of that. She was supposed to give a copy to Bob and the county chamber, Diane Gray. But they were all sent to the proper addresses that you would go and pick up your mail. And I can have those letters. I can have those letters for you.
Those businesses that haven't received them and they're interested in this topic, and I think they should pay close attention to it, please get a copy tomorrow from David, so that you'll be well prepared before we have the next session, which is we haven't picked a date for that.
Can David send those out again tomorrow?
I will make copies and have them available from the get-go.
You know, there are copies on the website of this packet, which include the definitions.
Okay.
And everything that you gave us. This is on the website.
But if you want a fresh copy, please, they'll be ready for you at 8:30 tomorrow morning in the office.
And I'd suggest that you include the old definitions and as well as the new, so that people can
Not a
compare,
problem.
just like the council. It's such it's so important to the commerce of our city. Are we ready, though, to waive the first reading and introduce it and setting a public hearing date? In the meantime, the businesses can scrutinize it and be ready for the next step.
You want a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we introduce ordinance number 440, an ordinance amending chapter 15.12 of the municipal code, waiving the reading and set public hearing for November 3rd, 2009.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Turco and seconded by Councilmember Boating, that we proceed with, let's see what item we're on, amendment of the sign ordinance, introducing sign ordinance number 440. And is that correct? Are we setting a date for November 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0. Okay, item number 10, League of California Cities Proposition 1A Securitization Program. Big bad word, securitization. Those of you that follow the press, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be making comments like that. Suggested repayment program for state borrowed property tax. Melissa Ralston, and this has to do with 8% of our property tax being reserved by the state and not coming to the city as it normally should. Melissa.
We took this to the Personnel Finance Committee. Basically, the California Communities and the League of California Cities have a Proposition 1A securitization program based on the suspension of Proposition 1A and the state wanting to take 8% of the property taxes. With Proposition A, when the state borrows from local municipalities and counties, they have to repay the debt within 3 years. So without this proposition, the city would be out that 8% until June 30th of 2013. The securitization program, basically what it does is we sell, or we give our receivable to California Communities. They issue bonds, and then they wait until June 30th to collect the money. In January and May of 2010, we would get our normal allocations for the property taxes. The state would be paying 2% interest on that, and if we do this, assign our receivable to the California Communities, we would not get that 2%, but we would not have to wait 3 years for our money. So what I'm asking is that we go ahead. I've enrolled us to get the information, but I'd like to go ahead and commit us to this program so that we can go ahead and receive our funds.
And bottom line, and we reviewed this at the Personnel Finance, and we agreed with the recommendation. Bottom line is that we'd be giving us $1,800 to $100, approximately $1,800 of interest money accrued, but we wouldn't receive that until 2013.
That's correct.
And we felt that it was appropriate to receive the benefits of the revenues now, and not worry about this windfall of $1,800 several years from now.
And also, as more information on that, with the Prop 1A, if the state borrows, they can repay it and turn around and borrow again. But with the establishment of Prop 1A, they can only borrow 2 times within 10 years. So kind of defeats the purpose of them trying to repay it and then turn around and borrow again. The bonds will also be tax exempt and are guaranteed by the state for repayment. So there should be no problem with California Communities securing the bonds. If they are unsuccessful, nothing happens. There's no financial impact at all.
Personnel Finance, we kind of figured it was a no-brainer as far as doing it. There's no way we can lose.
Right.
Worst thing that can happen is we'll go back to where we're at now.
Right, we'll wait.
Now, as a comment, and this is based on reading a little bit, it was before the Senate, and the Senate did not pass it.
What was that, the securities?
Yes.
Or the securitization program?
And now they've been requested to come back in session in the middle of October and pass it, so that this 1A is still, it's not something that has passed the Senate. Until the Senate approves it, it will not be done.
Are you talking about the borrowing of the money from the local?
The language that sets this up has to be approved by the Senate by some vote in the Senate. And the language was put forward and it did not pass. And they're coming back for a second vote, and the League of Cities is urging council members to comment and call your senator and say, please vote for this so that the securitization program can come into existence. Anyway, so I think if we go forward with it, we have to realize that it's got to pass the Senate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I think they recessed without
yeah,
taking care of that.
That's correct.
And also the gas tax.
Yeah.
Right, the gas
So
tax is still
these
out there.
are,
Right.
so I think if we go ahead with it, and I have no problem with going ahead with it, I think I'm just saying that you've got to be aware that it might not happen if the Senate bill doesn't happen. And it has to do with timing because of, it's got to be done within this time frame. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective until next year, and then something else happens that puts the well, then it's beyond the time that you'd normally be receiving your funds in January and May.
Right, all the documentation has to be signed and returned by November 6th.
Okay. To give you the audience a sense of what we're talking about, this is $89,000 that would be delayed until 2013. Okay, and it's been thoroughly reviewed by in the Personnel, Finance, and recommended?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead then and have a motion? Oh, public comment? Okay.
Mystery solved, resolution, it's the same resolution on number 3 and number 10, so you got to pick it out which one you want.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Any other comments? What's the help?
As Craig and Jack said, this came up at the personnel meeting that I was at yesterday, and there are 750 agencies that are involved in this, and we were all trying to figure out what the downside of this could possibly be, and we couldn't figure out anything. And actually, this organization ends up making about $18 million, but we get our money before 2013, so that's a good thing.
Okay. The public comment.
That's not true, but.
Rick Downey, 817 Smith Flat Road. This is not related to number 10, but as the meeting's gone on, I'm wondering, are we going to make special arrangements for the November 3rd meeting? Historically, on elections, there's a change in the meeting date. Either that or they do a stand-up meeting.
Yeah, we do a stand-up meeting early in the morning, 8 o'clock at Firehouse.
Is that what that's going to be then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we understand. So it'll be 8 a.m. and at the Firehouse.
Thank you.
That maybe, we'll have to see. At the last 2 years, election year, we have held it at the Firehouse, and elections have been at Bret Hart. Or here, actually, here at Bret Hart. So we don't know yet. I'll be finding that out.
But it will be a stand-up meeting at 8 a.m. at a place to be announced.
Very short one.
And in fact, it could be done even at City Hall.
But you
Question.
You have three things that you continue to November 3rd. It seems pretty complicated. Is it going to be that easily discussed on a stand-up meeting? You got agenda items 7, 8, and 9
Right.
continue to November 3rd. Are you going to be able to address that correctly without having a formal meeting?
We had a regular council meeting last year on the election day, so,
Just,
When we didn't, the only time we did actually have a stand-up meeting was when we had incumbents running again, so they had to be certain places and stuff. But otherwise, I believe last year, the year before, we did have a regular meeting.
Okay, but thanks for that. Thanks for the observation.
Be a quick meeting that way.
Yeah, we're not going to be there.
Item number 11.
We haven't voted on 10.
Oh, okay. Okay, we come back up here. Thanks. League of California Cities, we have a resolution 09-41. Thank you.
You want a motion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What's the resolution number, please?
It's
09.
41 or 42, I will change.
One of
So
those
those
two.
are
It's
typos, I
41?
apologize again. I would say
41.
41, I will change it, I don't
I'm
have.
gonna enter the motion as it's written here. Is that 41?
It says 41,
Okay.
yes.
I move that we approve resolution number 09-41, a resolution directing staff to join Prop 1A securitization program through the California Communities and Joint Powers Authority sponsored by the League of California Cities and California State Association of Counties.
Second.
Councilmember Turco has moved and Councilmember Bodine has seconded. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 4-0. Item number 11, consideration of reduction in force of peace officer personnel. And this was continued from our September 15th City Council meeting. And I'll call on Richard Matranga.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of many uncomfortable options that the council has had to grapple with, and as you get towards adoption of your budget. That's about all I have to say. It's come back to you now, I think, at least 3 times, 4 times. So, good luck.
The council action before us is a consideration of reduction in force equivalent to 1 police officer, 1 peace officer position, and directing staff to give notice to affected employee pursuant to city personnel policies, MOU, and any other applicable rules or regulations. Council members have any questions for Richard?
No, I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. We have been grappling with this because it's part of the budget. There's nobody that's more in favor of the police officers or the police officers, and I have a daughter that's a policeman. It's something that's in the budget. We have tried and tried and tried to get the Police Officers Association to see if they could come up with a way to stretch some dollars so that we could keep this person. But it's not going to happen. I think the budget it just isn't there. We just don't have the funds. It's got to go. That position has got to go.
I'd like to open up for public comments.
Steve DeFew, 576 Sasa. I have a question. Did we get a shortfall with Tim Shear leaving and that $118,000 he was making? Have we put that money someplace to where that might be considered a shortfall, and having this officer stay on for 1 more year with that extra money?
Any other public comment?
Yeah, my name's Dave Scarborough. I'm president of the Angels Camp Police Officers Association, and I've been a police officer here for going on 6 years. There are 2 major concerns that I have right now. One is public safety, and the other is officer safety and the reduction of force. In just the last 4 months, I took liberty to review our stats, and let me give you just a basic outline of what we're facing over the last 4 months. We've had 2 child molests, which are under 10 years of age. We've had 1 attempted murder, 16 burglaries, 9 grand thefts, 4 assault with deadly weapons, 8 domestic violence calls, 15 vandalism, both felonious and misdemeanor, 27 misdemeanor or miscellaneous thefts, which also include felonious thefts of credit cards, checks, fraud, and also possession of stolen property. We've had 1 unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor. We've had 15 DUIs, 3 weapons calls, 16 incidences of alcohol abuse, which all ended up in arrest, 3 stolen vehicles, and 8 batteries. With the reduction of, I'm assuming, our 9th officer, because we were allotted 10, we had 1 unfilled position which was cut, I believe, at the beginning of the fiscal year. When we lose the 9th officer, you've effectively taken away an investigative slot. And with that, many of these crimes that I just read to you, they require follow-up, and they require an investigative time frame, which adds an additional burden to the existing staff that you have. Not only that, but with the officers that are currently working, we're mandated by post to have continuing education, which also brings overtime into play when officers have to go to training, when officers are sick or they're injured. We have a sergeant out right now for the next 4 months on disability because of shoulder surgery, which reduces our force down to 7. During that time, the citizens need to understand that this definitely impacts them and the public safety, because primarily we have one officer on for a 24-hour period. We do have a chief of police during the day, and we have a school resource officer that is there from Tuesday through Friday. Otherwise, we have one officer working the streets. When we deal with crimes such as DUIs or any type of an arrest, that takes that officer off this street and leaves the city uncovered for a period of time. We drive to San Andreas to the jail. We have to process a person after the arrest. Interview interrogation is also a part of it. Evidence processing, which can effectively reduce to this city 0 coverage up for at least a 2-hour period with DUIs sometimes. So that means that the city is basically uncovered. So if something was to happen during that time, then you have to rely on the sheriff's department as your backup, which many times those officers are responding from Copper, or they're responding from Murphy's, or from Arnold. With the reduction in force, it creates an overtime burden on its existing officers to fill sick time, vacation time, injury time, and that puts an undue burden on its officers as well. I understand that council has a very difficult position, but obviously, you know, I'm pro-police because I work with these people and we are dedicated to this city. We strive to give this city the best police services that we can possibly give under the current circumstances with our current equipment. I understand the costs that are involved in training a police officer. You have to understand that when you lose one, hopefully in the future when our economy rebounds, that we're going to be wanting to hire that person back, or at least upgrade our force or include more personnel. Because to really be effective in this city, 2 officers on at all times is ideal, because many times we're out there by ourselves. We have no backup. We handle all the calls that I've just given you as individual officers, which creates an officer safety concern. Domestic violence and traffic stops are the 2 most dangerous calls that we respond to, and many times we deal with it by ourselves. And that's an officer safety concern. The other concern is for the public. When we have a reduction in force, are we really able to follow up, you know, with investigative means when we don't have the means to investigate? It takes time and follow-up to investigate major crimes. And that is a major concern of mine as well, because we can't do it effectively when we don't even have an investigator anymore. And also it takes the time of an individual officer on his day off to come in, primarily myself, which I have done many times, to investigate major crimes and do it on my time off, which takes time away from my family. So reduction in force definitely is something that hurts us. I'm sorry that we could not come to an impasse, or excuse me, come to an agreement. But on the other hand, there was communication issues, you know, that Joe Santella, our representative, will be voicing, I believe. I just got a call from the city's negotiator this morning at 7 o'clock in the morning that gave me the city's counteroffer. That was how many hours prior to city council, to the city council meeting. In my eyes, that doesn't show good faith. You know, when I get a call from the negotiator that represents the city and tells me that this is what the city's counteroffer is, can you pull a vote together? Well, good luck. You know, I mean, that's a little bit short notice. I've had to call City Hall and ask for specific figures in order for us to try to come up with some type of a means, you know, to meet the shortfall. We were not able to do that in time. So I hope, and I understand your position, I understand it's very difficult. You know, we're talking about Officer Arias, you know, who has a family, a life, a job, a career, and that's on the line here.
Any other comments, please?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Joe Santella. I am a labor representative with Operating Engineers Local 3. I've been retained by the Angels Camp Police Officers Association to assist them in labor issues, primarily in contract negotiations with the city. At the June 22nd meeting, which was the first meeting that the city and the Police Officers Association sat down to discuss concessions regarding this topic, the two lead negotiators that were introduced to that meeting was the city's lead negotiator and myself as the lead negotiator for the Police Officers Association. At that time, specific questions were asked of the city's negotiator, which he could offer us no parameters and no direction from the city council as to what it was we were specifically looking at in the way of concessions so that we could enter into good faith bargaining. We did not meet again with the city's negotiator until August 21st. At that meeting, the city's negotiator laid out a dollar figure and basically said that was the bottom line that the city was looking for. We entered into discussions back and forth, the give and take of normal bargaining. The Police Officers Association provided a counter proposal. That's all it was a counter proposal to look at ways to meet that dollar figure and save the officer position. The lead negotiator for the city offered us no other parameters other than the dollar figure. So our counter proposal was based upon hitting a dollar figure looking at the current situation. Our counter proposal met that. On September 17th, I received a telephone call from the city's lead negotiator telling me that he had some further clarification, some further financial information, and that he would be forwarding it to me that weekend. Today's October 6th. I have still not heard from the city's lead negotiator with regards to the counter proposal that the city would be offering based upon our counter proposal. Now we are here tonight looking at this item on the agenda. My Police Officer Association president received a call this morning. I did not. I was identified as the lead negotiator. I mean, the appearance of this is looking like surface bargaining. It puts the city in a very bad light. I'm struggling to understand, you know, how we get to here when we haven't even bargained but one real meeting and one exchange of counter proposal going. That's not negotiating. That's not dealing in good faith. You know, I've been negotiating labor contracts for about 30 years. And for the last 22 months, my organization, my colleagues and I, have been working with a number of cities and counties trying to wrestle with this budgetary issue and the idea of layoffs, furloughs, those kinds of things to get at the budget woes that we're all experiencing. Never in the last 22 months had a single bargaining session regarding such a hot topic item as budgetary reduction. One meeting. So I understand the urgency that the council faces, but I do believe it's not your intent to bargain in bad faith, but it is my opinion that's where you're at. Thank you for your time.
George Fry, 1304 Oak Place. I'm a retired state parole agent, California Youth Authority. As a retired sworn peace officer and as a parole agent for the state of California, I can't stress enough the comments that were made by the former previous gentleman. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. But anyway, in this county, the backup we have is the highway patrol and the sheriff's deputies. Highway patrol is only on until 8 o'clock at night. The sheriff's deputies, they're down to one person in all the different areas at nighttime. When I worked as a parole agent on the streets and in the areas, we always had the police department, the highway patrol, the sheriff's department, and we had that backup 24 hours a day. This was in large cities. To lose one sworn peace officer in a small town like this that is growing by leaps and bounds is a sad state of affairs. I likewise was wondering, and I've been waiting to see what was going to happen with these negotiating that's been going on since I think early June that I can remember, and wondering now that Tim Shear's gone and we have his salary, and I honestly don't know what his salary amount is, but I think it's close to $100,000 a year, and I don't see why we can't use some portion of his salary to fund this really needed sworn peace officer. Thank you very much for your time.
Any other public comment?
Natalie Hammond, 1241 South Summit. I am a single mother of 2 children, lived in this town for 15 years, have worked here and am going to school full-time and also own a business in this town. Being someone who has been here and had children here, I can say that I can speak for a lot of people in this town, that one of the reasons that I like living here is because I feel safe with my children out and about in our community. Even though in the last 15 years, definitely the crime rate has gone up and things have gotten worse in this area along with others. But I think one of the main reasons that we are not like LA and San Diego and Sacramento, besides the fact of our size, is that the amount of police officers per capita to the amount of people that are here, they are able to keep the crime down somewhat better than in other places, which is why a lot of people move to this area. I, for one, probably would not live here if the police department keeps getting smaller. I have called the police department numerous times for drug usage in my neighborhood, theft in my neighborhood. It is getting worse, and I just would like to say that I am afraid in my own neighborhood on 1241 South Summit that things are getting worse, and if you keep taking police officers, it's not going to get any better. And being a single mom, I just would like to express my opinion. Thank you.
My name's Angelina Shergill. I live at 314 South Main Street. My concern is, as a business owner, I don't feel safe if you, as I own the liquor store here in town, I don't feel safe if you cut a position, as I've had several incidents where I've had to wait for CHP to come to help us because Angels PD was on a call. One guy, he's down. Sheriff's takes how much is the response time now for them to come here, and I had to wait 45 minutes, 9 months pregnant, to get help from a CHP officer because there was nobody around. And I think if you take more away, then our safety goes away. As a business owner, I moved here from Modesto. I've been here 8 years, and I feel safer here than obviously in Modesto. And if you guys keep cutting the force, then us as business owners, what can we do? I mean, your response time is thin as it is, obviously, because we don't have that many guys, but then it's going to get even worse when we have to wait for sheriff, because who knows where they're going to come from. Arnold, San Andreas, Valley Springs, wherever they're at, whoever's on call, it's going to be a bigger response time. So I think it should be considered not only for the citizens, but as business people as well, before they make that decision. Thank you.
Dave Scarborough again. Just to reiterate the fact that now that Mr. Shear is no longer employed or is not here gaining a salary, there is a certain dollar figure that I would like to know what we are doing with that. And I know that his salary is above and beyond what the city was asking in concessions.
Okay. Any more public comments? We'll attempt to respond to all the questions when we get them.
Steve DeFew, 576 Sausage. Just to reiterate the argument about the officer's safety, because of the rash of killings that CHP experienced in the last 2 years, it's now mandatory to have 2 CHP officers in a car from 12 midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning. So this is a real happening. You get somebody on Met and a police officer by himself, he's got to pull him over for whatever reason. It takes sometimes 2 or 3 guys to take care of a guy that's on Met. So public safety also goes a support of the officer safety. And I already said this 3 or 4 months ago. I know we have a deficit, except we have a strong general fund. And I don't think the economy is going to last as long, before we deplete that general fund. I think we have to get creative here. When we start getting down to 7 police officers, that figure speaks for itself. And I'd like you folks to maybe elaborate on what you thought you were going to do with the shortfall of Tim's salary. So thank you.
Steve's comment about the meth, we all know that this is a big meth area and there's a lot of cranksters. And it is tough trying to take somebody down with 3 or 4 people. But try somebody that's on PCP. I mean, that's an elephant drug. And it takes 8 or 10 people to take that person down. Thank you.
Any other public comments? We'll close our public comment and bring it up here. Council members, we need to respond to the questions from the public. I'd like to ask a question to Joe Santella. In your meeting, what was the dollar amount that you have been told? I assume that's by Scott Kennelly.
Correct. He's the city's negotiator.
We have a very clear idea in our minds what the dollar shortfall is in our budget. Just so the public understands, we currently are facing a budget shortfall of $609,000, which is the largest that we've seen in the recent years. We do have reserves to protect it. But that $609,000 includes a projection of savings of the cost of this officer. So I'd like to ask you, what is the number in your mind, Joe?
It was on my mind. We were told by the city's negotiator it was $88,000.
That's correct.
We returned a counter proposal that saved $90,000 over a longer period of time. However, I might want to just reiterate so it's clear, we were given no parameters as to the length of time or the structure by which the city wanted that $88,000 savings. So we counter-proposed. We actually counter-proposed a little bit more money than what the city was asking, but we also recognized that we were looking at an 18-month deal and did not know the city was looking for a 1-year deal until I was told that on September 17th. I was also promised information that weekend. To this date, I still have not received any of that information.
I just wanted to make sure that police officers knew the dollar amount. Comments. How about Tim Shear's salary? For your edification, Tim is on leave of absence right now. He's drawing on his sick leave. He will be on city salary until I believe it's February.
Through February.
It'll be through the month of February, so he'll go off city salary beginning March 1st. And that amount is not really related or connected to the $609,000 shortfall that we have in our budget. The city council is, and I'll speak as myself, but I speak for the others. We are by no means interested or desirous of reducing any staff anywhere in our city, and particularly with respect to safety. But however, the realities of the where we are in terms of the revenues of the city, whether it's a sales tax, it's property tax, transient occupancy tax, all of the things that have been coming, the various grants that have been available in the past, particularly in safety services, have been withdrawn from the city. And what you see at the city council doing is taking that in a responsible financial way and say, well, how can we continue to exist as a city? And we're not unique by any means in this regard. And after considerable discussion, that was the number. And Joe, you do have the right number. And I know that negotiations were conducted, and I know that efforts were made with respect to your officers in terms of responding to it. But that's where we are, and we have not been able to reach an accommodation at this point in time.
And to further
I'd like to have others comment.
And to further that, it's more than just the $89,000. That's for the one fiscal year of 10-11. If you add in the fiscal year of the remainder of 9-10, then you add another $67,000, correct? So it's more than just that one number. And then there's something else that obviously that you folks aren't aware of, but as we move into next year, we're gonna absorb another $60,000 hit in the police expense, because we're not going to have the grant money that's covering the SRO officer and a portion of the detective officer. So, I mean, in the big scheme of things, it may not seem important to some of you folks. I see he's chuckling back there, but that's an incorrect statement.
Because the SRO position is granted to a private grant.
Not next year, it's not. It won't be next year. That's what I'm talking about.
You don't know that, Mr. Terrico.
Okay. Let me rephrase it anyway, okay? The information that was given to us is that grant money won't be available. Is that a correct statement?
Correct. Basically, how I budget, I have half of the SRO and the detective salary come through the manpower grant, as well as your overtime and part-time. We have used up that reserve that we built up. So what we'd be doing now is working off our annual allotment of $99,500, and that will not cover those positions. That's what he's speaking to. The other half of the SRO is funded through the general fund through the schools.
And I'm not trying to debate it. I'm just trying to give you the information that we're dealing with here, because we wrestled with this up here trying to, well, let me finish, please. We wrestled with this trying to figure out how do we do this. We heard the proposals from the POA, which I can't go into because it was obviously closed session issues. But we heard the proposals. We hope that we were going to be able to come to some meeting of the minds, and it didn't work out. The issue about the city administrator, we don't know how much we're going to have to spend to replace him if we choose to do that next year, to be quite frank with you. We don't know if bringing on another interim city administrator will cost that kind of money, because sometimes these folks that work for a year or less, they charge high dollars. We have no idea. So to commit to a windfall of the city administrator would be foolish and not fiscally responsible on the council's part. So to address those issues, I want you folks to understand that we're not taking this lightly, and this is a very serious issue, but we have to look at the facts that are before us. I recognize what Dave said. I recognize what you said. We all talked about public safety. But I guess those are my comments. But I wanted to relate to you folks some of the other information that goes into thinking about it. It's not such a narrow focus, single dollar amount. There's a big picture that we need to address. So
I would just like to say that I agree with all the other council members, and it's very unfortunate. I'm not for laying any people off, anyone at all, but the figures just aren't there to support this at this time.
Can we make further comment?
I think we've had sufficient comments, George. The council has the dilemma of a $609,000 shortfall, and it's with reluctance and disappointment that we're going in that direction. And however, as has been stated, after consideration of our alternatives, the $609,000 is an overwhelming kind of a shortfall in our budgets.
So there's no fallback position at all then, money-wise?
Well, to give you a sense of it, our general fund balance at June 30th was $1.8 million, and we're going to be drawing that down over $600,000 in this fiscal year. And that is a monumental drawdown of our general fund reserves.
I guess really what my question is
So we need some money from somewhere else.
I guess really what my question is how much will it cost to have this peace officer stay on? How much will it cost the city?
The number,
$88,000, is that
the
the correct number?
Yes, that's the number that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Okay. Is there need for further discussion? We have before us the reduction in force equivalent to one peace officer position, and we need a motion to proceed on that. What do we do, Richard, at this point in time? It's your topic.
If you proceed on that, yeah, thank you. You direct your staff to go ahead and determine who that officer would be based on seniority, most likely, and any applicable MOUs and other rules and regulations of the city, and give the appropriate notice and consideration to appropriate severance package.
Okay. Now, you went pretty quick. Mary, do you want to repeat that?
I'd probably just repeat the motion, I think.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it after the motion's made or right now?
Repeat.
Okay, the motion is to direct staff to give notice to the affected employee pursuant to city personnel policies, MOU, and any other applicable rules or regulations, and to notify the employee. I guess I did.
Any comments on that?
Not me.
Is that a motion then, Richard?
I'll
Make that
make
as a
a
motion.
to that.
Okay, that is a motion been made by Elaine Morris, and I'll second that. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor say
I don't want a roll call.
roll call vote.
Please.
Okay, we'll start with you, Jack.
Yes.
Did you hear that? Yes. Elaine?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Lynch? Yes. Okay, we'll move to item number 12. And the police officers, I want you to know it is with our regrets that we're doing it. And thank you,
It's not been easy.
and
It
thank
has
you,
not been easy.
thank you and the other officers for the service they give to our city. And We're sorry that this is the action that the council is taking.
I'll have a call from Jamie tonight.
Item number 12, consideration, approval, and adoption of fiscal year 2009-2010 budget. Continued from our September 15th council meeting. And we have before us a resolution, and we'll call on Melissa first of all to make her introductions and comments.
Okay, before you, you have Resolution 0939.
Can you all hear her? Bring that closer, Melissa.
You have Resolution 0939 to adopt the annual budget for the 09-10 fiscal year. Section 1 will read the final attached budget for fiscal year 9-10 in the amount of $17,556,247 is hereby adopted.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Again, Mary, these are all online?
Yes.
Okay, that's one thing that the city is doing a good job, if I may make a comment, about putting all of our resolutions, all of the documents that the city council members have in our possession are now available online. When I first started getting interested in the city, I went to City Hall and asked for a copy of the budget. I was told it cost $10, and we'll get it for you tomorrow. Well, now our city budgets are online, and again, it's open and accessible, so people that are interested can look at the $17,556,247. Okay. Question, comment, public comment.
Steve Defew, 576 Lassa. Thank you for clarifying the ambiguity about Shear's savings. I mean, I didn't know what, what you guys were thinking. I have a question for you.
And incidentally, in that regard, Steve, it's required by law that we're doing this, and
well, it's good to get it out and get it defined. So, I didn't know it.
And further, he under the law, he retains his position as a city employee while he's deployed.
Yeah. Could you bring me up without taking too much time? I was shocked by the budget deficit. The last time I heard it was around $430,000 while we're going through the budget thing. What happened? What happened to knock it up to $600,000?
Revenue loss was one of them. Then we didn't.
The reallocation from the wastewater fund to the general fund is the majority of that.
I didn't quite hear that, Melissa.
We did that reclass of expenses that went to the wastewater O&M account.
Oh.
I don't know if you have that spreadsheet, but anyway, we reclassed over $100,000 of expenses that were coded to wastewater back to the general fund.
When did this get determined?
That was all part of the process of setting the rates. In order for the rates to remain at a constant
for the cost per gallon.
we had to reallocate. We had to appropriately.
So this deficit in regards to our general fund is about 33% then.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that is a big hit, even though we exceed general funds amounts compared to cities our size. But I can understand, being safe. But thanks for the explanation.
And we're not expecting next year to be much better.
Okay, we have
I make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 2002-10 budget, resolution number 09-39.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Boating has moved the adoption of the budget under Resolution 09-39, seconded by Councilmember Morris. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Carries 4-0. Item number 13.
Okay, Resolution 0931 is brought back. We actually approved the cost per gallon calculation at the last city council meeting, but we didn't have an approved budget. So basically nothing on this sheet has changed. The cost per gallon that will be charged to the other institutions will remain the same.
So all you're looking for is a motion to approve this?
Yes.
I've got a question. Melissa, the number doesn't seem to check. Is that the same number that exists currently?
Yes, it would be on one of the spreadsheets. There was a formula, there was an O&M charges, and then there was the debt service.
What is the current sewage charge?
For O&M is $1.7 million.
No, but what is the current rate per gallon?
0.01682.
That's what we're currently charging?
Yes.
Now, if you take the dollar amount and divide it by the volume, I don't come out with that number. I come out with a lower number. I just want to make sure that the number is the same as we're currently charging, and I was not able to go back and check.
I didn't bring that with me,
last
but
year's number. But if I take the $1,787,000 and divide that by the gallons,
in the cost per gallon calculation, what you're coming up with, the difference would be the capital improvement charge that's involved in that rate structure.
So it's not a simple...
it's not a division of the dollar amount by the volume?
No, there is a capital fee that's in there.
What is that number?
I don't have that with me.
So it'd be...
It's a larger number than $1.7 million?
What would it come out of the 1.7 million?
The additional monies is included in the 1.7.
Well, I don't get the. I'd like you to clarify the numbers. I want to make certain that the 0.01682 per gallon is the same rate that we currently are charging.
It is.
And I want to make sure that the numbers that are showing in the resolution coincide to give you that number, but they don't.
I didn't bring that with me.
No, but I mean,
yeah.
We had it last time, though, didn't we?
Yes.
I don't know what.
So then the capital approval would have to come out of that number to get that to the 0.162. Is that correct?
The capital improvement is included in that number.
I'd like to have this item continued because I want to make sure that someone can pick up this and do the math and it comes out 0.01682, and I want to make sure that that 0.01682 is what we announced last year was our charge. And I believe it's correct, but I wanted to make certain that we don't have anything in here, because I just ran the numbers and I don't agree with it. I get 1.3 cents rather than 1.6 cents as a charge.
We had all this at last meeting, though, didn't we?
Yeah.
I don't.
Is it a problem if we continue?
I don't think it's a big deal.
That's what I just asked.
Yeah. I'd like to continue this until the next council meeting.
We don't care down here. It's fine with us.
Okay, we'll continue item number 13 to the next council meeting. We'll now move to calendar. And again, the calendar's online so that people can look at that. You want to...
Okay. Wednesday, tomorrow at 6:30 is COG at the Supervisors' Chambers. Thursday at 5 o'clock is the Traffic Circulation Committee. At 6 o'clock is the Planning Commission. Saturday, the 10th, is Taste of Calaveras. The 12th is City Hall is closed, but it's ACPA candidate night at camps. see here, the 14th, FYI, safety services will be canceled. As of today, what I received today, so safety services will be canceled. The 15th at 8:30 is the Museum Commission, and that is also the Calaveras County Economic Summit Forum. I don't have an agenda yet. I don't know if anyone else has received one, but I'll make sure you get it before. I haven't received it yet. That's going to be probably, I'm not sure where. Friday the 16th is Facilities Infrastructure at the Firehouse. That's not here. The 17th is the ACPA Sidewalk Sale, the BLT Swap Meet, and for Oktoberfest Parade. On the 19th is LAFCO, and also on the 19th is the City of Angels is asking for comments and suggestions on their ADA plan, Americans with Disability Plan. There's flyer will be going out for, it'll be at Bret Harte High School. It's been in the papers. I posted it at the post office, and we're working on a plan, a draft plan, which will be coming back to you guys at some point.
Is that a county?
That's city.
Plan?
That is through city, through the American Disabilities. We had to redo it, review it, and update it. And Steve Flagg has been working on that, so he's working with them directly so they can get this going. And then on the 20th is